Britain's news channel.
British fighter jets on standby to shoot down Chinese spy balloons as the Chancellor faces pressure to increase defence spending.
Good morning, it's 6 o'clock on Tuesday the 14th of February.
Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
This is breakfast news on GB News. This is breakfast on GB News. You put me off there with Eamonn, Holmes and Sarah Khan.
Very good to have you all on board on this Valentine's Day. Here's what's leading the news this morning.
Rishi Sunak has pledged to do whatever it takes to keep the country safe from Typhoon fighter jets ready to shoot down Chinese spy balloons. It follows the downing of a fourth suspected device over the United States.
Now, all of this comes as the Chancellor faces pressure to raise military spending in his budget next month, with the Defence Secretary reportedly pushing for an £11 billion increase.
70,000 university staff begin a three-day strike today as industrial action continues to grip the country. The disruption to lectures and seminars will affect 150 universities.
New data reveals parents lend their children £17 billion a year. Economists are worried about this. They warn that it's fueling inequality. We'll ask if it's time to shut down the bank of mum and dad, or how our kids could possibly survive without it.
And as Eamonn said, it's Valentine's Day today.
Roses are red,
that's why I've got my red on, you've got your red tie on.
You've got a nice red dress that suits you.
Yes. That's not red, by the way, that's a little bit burgundy. Well, it's a bit blue.
I don't know what colour
it's
you
not
think
the right
it is.
kind of red for Valentine's Day, but anyway.
Oh, see, that's what puts men off. Do their best. That's what they get. Has your hubby been in touch?
Oh, he has. Can I read this out quickly?
Please read
so
this out.
he's gone to France with the kids because it's half term.
Because it's Valentine's Day.
And do you know what? At 3 o'clock this morning, he sent me this. Let me read this. Happy Valentine's Day. The box that arrived for you has got a little present inside. There's also a card from me and another small present in my bedside cabinet. Oh. Can't wait to see what it is.
Can't wait to get home and see that. Yeah.
So what have you done for Ruth?
It's,
yes.
Look, it's not me. I'm the romantic. It's her that's
Don't
not the
start.
romantic.
It takes two to tango.
But I have got lots of other cards from lots of other people, you know.
Have you? Who?
Yes. Well, it's a mystery. It's a mystery. They're all signed with a question mark. I don't know.
Do you remember that time when you were young and you used to go to your locker and think, have I got a Valentine's Day card? I never got a Valentine's Day card when I was young.
That doesn't surprise
I've only
me.
got one from my husband, actually, nobody else. Do you get like ones with like just a question mark?
All the time.
Yeah,
All the
right,
time.
in your dreams.
And I know who they're from, really. There are people around this office and they can't hide it. I know who it's from.
Anyway, we'd love you to get in touch with us and tell us how you're celebrating. What you're doing. Twitter us.
Does romance die at a certain age and stage in life where it's not worth doing? I don't think so. I think romance should always be there. And let us know how your Valentine's Day, you've woken up to us. Did you wake up to a Valentine's card? Let us know. OK, here's the top news story this morning. The Prime Minister has vowed to do whatever it takes, in his words, to keep the country safe amid threats from Chinese spy balloons.
Rishi Sunak said Typhoon fighter jets were on standby in the event of an incursion after the United States shot down a fourth suspected device.
Now, it comes as the Chancellor faces pressure to increase military spending to tackle aggression by China and Russia, with the Defence Secretary asking for an extra £11 billion in funding.
Well, joining us now is the Deputy Editor of the political newspaper Caps. It's Alice Denby.
Morning.
How are you?
It's a big ask from Ben Wallace, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, heading into a budget, every department is going to be asking for more money. But I think common sense tells you that with a war happening in Europe and with whatever is happening in our skies with these Chinese balloons, that defence should be a priority. Many other NATO countries have increased spending on defence as a proportion of GDP since the invasion of Ukraine. And while Britain is a big spender on defence, I think a lot of people would say that this should be a priority.
But this is a different type of defence spending he's asking for here when we look into this spying from Russia, this cyber attacks and things that are taking place from certain countries. The Chinese thing's got everybody quite spooked by all of this. Where on earth would Jeremy Hunt find anything close to £11 billion?
Well, this is exactly the problem. When money is tight, the government needs to make strategic decisions about what the state can afford to do. And keeping people safe should be the first priority of any government. Defence has a particular issue because much of its budget is capital spending, which is particularly affected by inflation. And of course, as I say, we are at war. And I think it's fair to say that we've also been quite complacent about defence. I think the last time we had a strategic review was before the invasion of Ukraine, and troop numbers are set to fall. And I think, you know, the geopolitical situation has changed now. That said, defence also has a particular problem because there's a very bad history of wasteful spending. We spent £4 billion on tanks that have never been delivered. They shook and they deafened soldiers. So I think this is what will be giving Jeremy Hunt pause for thought, that if we are going to be putting more money into defence, well, how are you going to spend it properly?
I mean, when you say defence, you know, somebody who's not kind of like really into the defence budget or defence spending, what do we mean by defence? Because I'm sitting at home going, well, do we need tanks now? Because by the time we deploy tanks, we've probably been attacked anyway. You know, there's cyber attacks, there's these kind of balloons coming over. How are we going to spend this money? Because that's what I'd like to know.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not sure I have the answer for you. I think, as you say, the threats that we face are extremely complex and ever-changing. But then again, the war in Ukraine has shown that actually tanks and jets and, you know, surface-to-air missiles are really important. And I think, you know, as I say, this is a question of priorities. You know, Jeremy Hunt needs to make the decision of where he spends the scant resources of the state.
Yeah, I think for me personally, priority has to be looking after your own people in your country first, because...
But it gets so complex.
Exactly, I know.
The headline in the Telegraph, Alice, police use of Chinese drones risks UK security. Officers urged to be vigilant with technology as task force ordered to review equipment. So basically it turns out that a lot of police forces are using drones, all well and good, but they're all Chinese-made drones. So it's how the Chinese influence and this lack of trust with China and how their televisions and their telephones and their drones can all link back to an intelligence bank that they can build up and control. So it really is quite frightening. Are we getting to the stage where we just have to say we don't do business with China?
I think it's fair to say that we are entering something kind of more similar to a Cold War, and with the threats from Russia and China, we need to just rethink how we engage with these countries, that they are not friendly countries. But then again, when it comes to China, I mean, one in 7 people in the entire world is Chinese. It's not really, it's not possible, I think, to completely disentangle yourself from a country that's so big and so influential. And as for drones and spy balloons, I mean, frankly, I don't know, and nor does anyone else know what these things are and what kind of a threat that they pose.
Yeah, that's very, very true. Just looking at domestic matters, we've got more strikes today, university lecturers and workers as well. I mean, for somebody who's maybe, you know, undergone a 3 or 4 year university course, my goodness me, what a disruption for them as students.
Yeah, absolutely. Remember that this is a cohort who's still massively impacted by the pandemic, who've lost so much of their education. I think, as with all these strikes, it's you know, with the NHS, it's patients, it's students, it's pupils in school who are, you know, paying the price.
Yeah. Do you know, Sarah, I think there's certain people that, and certain sectors of workers, that the public say, that's awful, give them what they want. That may include NHS staff, ambulance drivers, nurses. It may include teachers, it may not. But I think once it gets to university lecturers, I can't see a lot of public support for what's going on there.
I think because our education was so disrupted during COVID, and we need to get our students back on track, and we need to get our, you know, kids back on track. And for me, that's kind of a real problem, you know. And I've got nephews and nieces who are at university. They missed that first year, and it's really difficult to have sympathy now.
And they can never get that back. You know, that's a formative year in your life that will predict your whole future, and you know, you can never get that back.
But I'm not saying that the strikes aren't justified. I'm just saying that when it comes to forking out money from the exchequer, I don't think the public sees university lecturers or workers as top of the list.
I agree with you. I think people have a great deal of sympathy for nurses who, you know, who have done incredible work. But as I say, I think this comes back to what we were talking about with defence, that this is a question of when you have limited resources, what do you choose to prioritise and what can the state afford to do? And I think we need to have a much deeper conversation about actually, is the state doing things that we think it doesn't actually need to do? Absolutely. The first thing it has to do is to keep people safe and, of course, to educate people. But we need to be looking at other areas where perhaps we think that this spending isn't necessary.
Yeah.
Do you know, I remember one night in Belfast walking out to my car, going down the pathway and looking up at the sky, and a UFO appeared. And then a wave of UFOs appeared, and a whole army, like it was like an invasion, just came up in the darkness. It was really dark around me, and just a formalized wave. It was like a squadron formation of these relatively slow-moving UFOs glowing in the sky. And I thought, my goodness, we're about to be.
Were you drunk? Had you had a little?
I'm telling you, they were there, wave after wave of them, right? Wave after wave. And then it was only later that night I found out that they were Chinese. And they were Chinese balloons. You know, when people have these, they light these balloons, these paper balloons, and they go up in the sky.
Lanterns. I see.
Yeah.
I see. Very clever what you did there.
But it was, honestly, I honestly thought it was a UFO invasion.
And nobody detected it. There was thousands of them.
I got family out and I said, look, and they all thought, people couldn't explain what they were in the black, dark sky. And they just came slowly, they were in formation. But it was only lanterns.
Lanterns.
Well, perhaps that's what these spy balloons are.
Yeah. Whatever they are.
Whatever they are.
If you've had sightings of anything you shouldn't have seen, let us know. Let us know. Are we alone? What else is out there?
I don't know what you're on today, but take another sip of that coffee before we start.
That's orange juice. I don't do coffee.
What are you like?
Anyway, 12 minutes past 6 o'clock. Get in touch with us. GBViews at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at GBnews. Alice, thank you. We'll see you later. Thank you very much.
It's over a week now since a devastating earthquake struck Turkey and Syria, and rescue efforts are still ongoing. There
are now fears that survivors pulled from the rubble will die from secondary causes like infection, with the issue worse in Syria, where the health system has been destroyed by years of war.
Well, joining us now for more on this is aid worker Lena Sahol. Good morning, Lena. How are you?
Good morning, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Lena, I was reading about you. You're actually from Nottingham, aren't you?
That's correct, yeah.
So how come you're in Turkey? Can you tell us your story? What got you out there?
Yeah, I've been to Gaziantep a million times. I'm a humanitarian aid worker. I've worked for many organizations that support Syria. And on this occasion, I was there to train my team in Gaziantep. And the plan was this week to enter Syria to visit our projects on the ground. But of course, unfortunately, that didn't happen this time around.
When the earthquakes happened,
Sorry, I missed that.
where were you, Lena, when the earthquakes happened?
I was in my hotel room, asleep. It was 4 a.m. I woke up to the noises in the hotel shaking. I thought it was bombing at the start. I jumped to take cover under a table. It took a good, they were saying it was about a 40-second earthquake, but it felt more like 10 minutes. We thought, honestly, it was never going to end. It felt like the whole hotel moved from its place. Once it was over, I tried to find my phone because everything had moved out of place. And I called my dad, who also resides in Gaziantep, and he told me it was an earthquake and to find my passport and leave.
But Lena, you must really wonder, and I must be very thankful that you're in a tower block, you're in a building that stays intact, and yet so many other buildings just collapse like a deck of cards.
Honestly, I still can't believe I'm alive. I keep thinking about it and how lucky and fortunate I am. I mean, until I left, even till that moment, we were seeing buildings collapse, and I was there for a good few days. And when I was going down the stairs, like the walls and the paints were cracking. They were just cracks, and I'm very, very fortunate that me and my father and my colleagues are all alive.
Well, you are also getting involved with trying to get people out of the rubble. I mean, can you tell us about what your working day is like, and also what have you seen?
Yeah, I haven't been involved with getting people out of rubble myself, but our teams on the ground have been supporting the White Helmets in giving them funds for new parts for machine and fuel. What we're seeing is absolutely crazy. I mean, I haven't checked yet this morning, but until last night, they were still rescuing people both in Syria and Turkey. Yeah.
Lena, we're talking about secondary infections. We're talking about people who are pulled from the rubble, and yet maybe the medical help is not there, especially in Syria, for them. How bad is the situation? How bad is being able to actually cope for the amount of people? We hear about the amount of people dead. What about the amount of people injured and caring for them? I presume the whole system is just overwhelmed.
Absolutely. The numbers keep going up and up. We can't keep up with the numbers. I mean, Syria's come out of 12 years of war. Everything they get, whether it's COVID, war or cholera, they're getting hit with it the most. And now again with the earthquake, they don't have a government to support them. The Turkey government have been amazing with their citizens, but of course Syria don't have the same with their government. It's been really hard to get aid in and out of Syria, into Syria, sorry. It's been really hard to find the right supplies on the ground right now. The best way people can support the people of Syria is to donate to trusted charities on the ground who are able to buy aid in Syria and to distribute it that way. It's been, an absolute catastrophe for the people of Syria, especially.
Well, thank goodness there are people like you. That's Lena Sahal from Nottingham. She's a humanitarian aid worker speaking to us live from Istanbul this morning. Respect to you, Lena, and continued success in what you're trying to do. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Lena.
Okay. Time 17 minutes past 6.
Let's bring you up to date with the headlines. Charities are urging MPs to take a clear stand in condemning violence against asylum seekers. An open letter with 100 signatories warns disorder outside a migrant hotel at the weekend could be repeated across the country. It follows fireworks being thrown at police outside the Suites Hotel in Knowsley, which saw 15 people arrested.
GPs face having to see more patients whilst the numbers of staff has dropped. Research commissioned by the Liberal Democratic Party shows between 2016 and 2022, the number of qualified doctors in England fell from just over 29,000 to just over 27,000.
A new Guinness World Record has been made for the longest kiss underwater. Free-diving couple Beth and Miles wanted to inspire others to fall in love with the ocean. They broke the previous record of 3 minutes 24 seconds with a new and improved time of 4 minutes and 6 seconds while in the Maldives.
Well, that's a nice bit of romance
That's
here.
lovely.
And
Underwater kiss.
Underwater kiss.
That's a long time, 4 minutes.
It is a long time.
That's a long snog, isn't it? Blimey.
That's a very long snog. In this week's Hello magazine, available in your shops now, you will see this person. You'll see this person who you may not recognise. That is our Sarah. And tell us the motivation. You look absolutely stunning, Sarah. Beautiful. Regal.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, the inspiration for this was I was on the red carpet yesterday for the premiere of What's Love Got to Do with It, and Jemima Goldsmith, who lived in Pakistan for 10 years.
Yeah.
You know, for a long time, as being a British Asian, I've been at odds with my culture, with my identity, and you just want to fit in. So that's what I've done. I've kind of like not really embraced it all. When you watch films like What's Love Got to Do with It,
yes,
you just go, actually, I need to embrace it. This is who I am. I can't hide it. I'm not embarrassed about it. And when I got married in a white dress.
Yeah.
And my mum had cancer last year. And I just thought, now that I'm a mum myself, I thought, I need to give my mum that photo of her daughter looking like her on her wedding day.
Right.
So this was the inspiration. I've never worn these clothes before, and it was just absolutely joyous and amazing to do it.
Has it in any way inspired you to renew your vows or to get married again?
Well, you know Steve.
Yeah. Oh, would you get married to Steve again?
No, well, this... You know Steve.
I know
and
Steve.
He's not a dressing up kind of person, because this is really dressing up.
Yes.
When I showed him these photos, he said, oh, my goodness, I want to do it. Let's renew our vows. So we're going to do it next year on our
lovely.
anniversary, yeah.
That's
and he's
really
going to
nice.
have the whole Asian clothes on and,
Yeah.
you know... and I've got a daughter who, as you know, I adopted from Pakistan. That is her you know, country, and I, as her mother, need to show her
that, yeah.
two identities. You can draw from the British, you can draw from the Asian. Own it, love it, live it.
I went to a birthday party 2 years ago where I had to dress in traditional Indian garb.
So did you have the...
I had a lovely suit. I had nice
Was it
trousers
Asian suit? I can't
and a
remember what the men's
tunic.
called it. It's called Shivani, I think.
It was very nice.
Was it comfortable?
It was lovely.
Yeah, it is.
It was all silky and, yeah, I thought I looked quite well in it.
Good.
Yeah.
Hey, you look very handsome.
I remember going to Dubai and wearing their dish dashes.
Oh, right.
My suit getting dressed
But
up.
I think that's actually a very sexy look.
Yes.
I don't know why.
Plenty
It's
of
all the
ventilation.
flowing garments
Yeah.
and, you know, the hair. It's very attractive.
Bit Lawrence of Arabia,
Yeah,
isn't
a bit
it?
like that,
Really?
yeah.
With that, we will take the break and we'll discuss if it's time to end the bank of mum and dad. What would the kids do without it? All that to come after your weather forecast.
Hello there, very good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Today is looking like a reasonable day for areas further to the east thanks to high pressure that is still generally in charge. But further to the west, we've got weather fronts that are slowly going to push their way in as we move towards the end of the day and particularly towards the middle of the week. This first weather front is bringing some cloud to Northern Ireland, parts of western Scotland, and could bring a few spots of rain in places. Meanwhile, there is a bit of fog first thing this morning across the southeast. Will be a bit dense to begin with, but should clear its way off and provide some fairly reasonable sunny intervals throughout the day. Temperatures will also be on the mild side thanks to our winds coming up from the south, pulling up mild air from Iberia. So wildly double-digit figures in northern areas of Wales, perhaps Devon and Cornwall as well, seeing highs of 14, perhaps 15 degrees Celsius. The winds, though, will be fairly brisk in the west and they'll continue to strengthen throughout Tuesday night as this band of rain wants to push its way in. So turning a bit damper here, and the cloud that builds will hold temperatures up across Northern Ireland, parts of western Scotland. Where we hold on to the clearer intervals further to the east, though, there is the risk of a patchy frost developing. We could also see some fog returning overnight, particularly further towards the south and east. Wednesday, then, is a day of watching this weather front gradually push its way eastwards across the UK. Could provide some heavy rain for Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland to begin with, but it will then tend to fizzle out as it moves across England and Wales. The far southeast of England actually holding on to a fairly dry and fine day with a good amount of sunshine, and that will help the temperatures climb to around 13-14 degrees Celsius, but a bit cooler further west where you are underneath that cloud. We'll see further unsettled conditions throughout the rest of this week, particularly strong winds possible in the north on Thursday night and into Friday, but temperatures are going to stay on the mild side. Enjoy your day.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very nice to have you on board. It's Eamonn and Sarah here. This is Breakfast on GB News, on television, on radio, online. Still to come this morning.
At 6:45, we'll bring you a GB News exclusive interview with the mother of the late Archie Battersbee, Holly Dance, who speaks out about her loss following the inquest into the death of her son.
So lost. Like my heart has been ripped out. It's literally the heart of my family. My home don't feel the same. It just feels cold and empty.
So that's at 6:45. Holly wants Archie's memory to live on with an Archie's Law. There you see Nicola Bulley, 7:20. We're going to be speaking to a friend and neighbour of hers as police widen their search for Nicola. Where could she possibly be? What has happened to her? The whole country wants to know. If you want something to say on this, gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can tweet at GB News.
Now, the so-called Bank of Mum and Dad has never been busier, as 17 billion is handed out by parents to their children annually.
What does all this mean? Joining us now to discuss, co-founder of the Intergenerational Foundation, that is Angus Hampton. Angus.
Morning.
Very good to see you, Angus. Why are you concerned about this? Why should we be worried about this?
Well, on the one hand, it's very good news, isn't it? Because it means that young people are getting the help they need. They've been so hard done by with their very, very high tuition fees, high housing costs, difficult situation financially with tax levels that effectively for them are 42% once they earn more than about 25,000. So it's good that they're getting this help, but I suppose what it reflects is the fact that the older generation can afford it, that they've done so well with housing, with incomes, with their pensions being secure. So we should really be encouraging it. But it turns out that it's very unequal, that it's fine for those where you're in a small family, 1 or 2 children, parents who are doing well. But what about when the parents aren't together? What about a situation where there are a lot of children and the parents just don't have the money? So it's spread so unequally. It turns out to be much less fair than it sounds.
Angus, can I just come in here? I completely understand that this could be fueling inequality, but you're talking here to me. I'm a girl from a council estate. My dad came to this country with £10 in his pocket. I've seen inequality throughout my life, but this country has given me the opportunity to grasp free education during my early years. I went to university. I worked extremely hard. There were jobs here. So what I'm trying to say is I'm a mother and, my dad helped me a little bit, put a deposit down for a house, but a lot of it I've done myself. You're never going to get rid of inequality, are you? That's what I'm trying to say. It's part of our life and we have to deal with that.
No, you're not going to get rid of it, but it seems to us that it's part of the government's job to try to minimise or at least reduce inequality. And here we're talking about an interesting aspect that this reflects. It's not just about inequality between different social classes, it's inequality between different generations. So what this reflects is that one generation, my generation, I suppose, has done extremely well, to some extent, at the expense of the younger generation. Now, parents are trying to compensate for that, but ultimately, government need to consider that baby boomers have done very well and younger generations have, sort of been screwed financially. Just to take one small example, I've got a free bus pass. That's for someone who's quite well off.
I'm dreading this because I'm thinking, you talk about our generation, we think we've done well. We have done well, but we don't think we've done well. We think we've grafted for it. We think we hadn't got it before. We have it now. It's ours to do what we want with. But I'm sort of hinting, and correct me if I'm wrong here, once you say government's got to get involved in this, that means the government are going to tax you for giving money to your kids. That's what that means at the end of the day, doesn't it?
No, I wasn't saying they need to get involved in that element. I was saying they need to get involved in to reduce the need for parents to make these such significant contributions to their children. They need to get involved in reducing the tax rate for younger people.
Yes, OK, so they would benefit rather than other people being penalised by it. And to pay for that, Angus, you were talking about bus passes there, whatever. I have this thing, Angus. I know people who are very well off and who absolutely get off on the fact they've got free train passes or free bus passes and they don't need them. They've got cars, I'm talking about really wealthy people, but they get this high out of using a free bus pass. I personally don't understand it, but some people have this perverse enjoyment of, taking a pension or taking a benefit when they don't necessarily need it.
Yes, well, in some ways we should be pleased that people are using public transport. It's less polluting. You're more likely to meet people. It leads to good things to have public transport. But perhaps if we really want to encourage it, we should have the equivalent for younger people. We should have free passes for those who are under 30. And indeed, some countries have experimented with free public transport for everyone.
But Angus, I don't quite understand how the government can help what you're suggesting, because they don't have any money, basically.
No, well, that's certainly true. The government have painted themselves into a corner financially, but they've partly done that through the huge amount of spending that was done on COVID, which realistically was spending mostly to protect the older generation. Now, I'm not saying that was wrong, but what I'm saying is it illustrates another element of intergenerational unfairness, that younger people suffered for that, and now they're still being forced to pay very high tuition fees, and they're being taxed very highly. And of course, they suffer from very high housing prices for purchase and high rents. So I think that there are a lot of policy things the government could do to improve fairness between generations.
In short, Angus, and in conclusion, is it worse being a young person in their late teens, in their early 20s, into their 30s now, than it was when you and me were that age?
Definitely. It's much worse now because it's harder to get a job. You're not so likely to have a secure final salary pension. Housing is very much more expensive. And although we do have the benefit, or they do have, younger people now have the benefits of the internet and so on, that's not something that we gave them. That was an inevitable technological change. And of course, we've left them with a very polluted planet or polluted countryside. So I think it was probably better with more opportunity in what I might call our day in the 1970s, for example.
Angus, would love to talk to you more in depth. Maybe you'll come back and see us sometime, and we'll speak here in studio about what your aims are, what the Intergenerational Foundation actually does. You're the co-founder of it. You are Angus Hampton. Appreciate your time and your explanations this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Eamonn. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Right, after the break, we're going to be going through the newspapers. Norman Baker and Emily Carver after this.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
.37 on radio, online, on television. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Sarah Khan.
Let's bring you up to date with the front pages today. The Mail leads on Rishi Sunak's plan to protect Britain with the headline, RAF are ready to shoot down spy balloons.
Going to be talking about that in the newspaper review very shortly. Times leading on water firms and the secret plot to sink tougher sewage rules.
The Guardian condemns the police's missed opportunities to arrest Sarah Everard's killer, Wayne Couzens, as a sex offender suspect.
And The Sun says that as Brits struggle with bills, energy bosses send 100 representatives to the Maldives.
OK, it's time to go through the papers now. Joining us this morning is former Lib Dem Minister Norman Baker and columnist at Conservative Home, Emily Carver. Good morning to you both.
Good morning. Norman, front page of The Guardian, front page, I think, of the Daily Mail. Rishi, RAF ready to shoot down spy balloons. What have you got to say on the whole phenomenon of spy balloons?
Well, there's a couple of things here. First of all, let's be quite clear. The Chinese government, under its present leadership, is determined to impose its view of how the world should be run on the world. And we are in a battle between the free world, between democracies, and between the authoritarian view that the Chinese government has. And we should take this very seriously. But in terms of the actual balloons themselves, I don't understand actually why the Chinese are doing this, because the capacity of satellites these days is enormous. You can have a satellite which can pick up what you're sitting in the garden and pick up what you're reading and actually see the press.
And it's undetected.
Undetected.
Yeah.
So why they would bother with balloons, I don't quite understand that.
They have to give some sort of strategic advance. But you think, Norman, or certainly The Guardian thinks that this is not new. They've been around for many, many years.
Yes, apparently so. And certainly the State Department in the US says with some glee that they were happening under Trump and weren't detected, which was probably true. But I mean, the Chinese do not stick to the same rules. The Chinese government doesn't stick to the same rules as the Chinese people. The Chinese government doesn't stick to the same rules as the Western democracies do. We need to understand that.
Emily, this is the thing, that they may have been around for many years. We just now are better at detecting them.
Yes, it seems that way. I mean, 4 spy devices downed in 9 days. That's quite a lot. That's a high rate of turnover of these devices. But I was listening to an international security expert yesterday, and he was saying that the US does the same thing. Also has these types of surveillance capabilities. So
takes one to know one.
Yeah, so I think this might be an opportunity, perhaps, for both Biden and Rishi Sunak now saying we're ready to shoot them down, to sort of grandstand a little.
All this business, I mean, if they've been around for years, Norman, RAF ready to shoot down spy balloons, they've got to spot them first, they've got to see them, they've got to detect them first.
Yes. Well, they may have known about them anyway and not done very much about it and been forced to do something because of the situation that's arisen. We don't know they're all Chinese, by the way. I mean, it could well be, to answer my question earlier on, it could be, for example, North Korean. And North Korea may not have a satellite capability, may have used these things instead.
It's interesting because it says here, these balloons and drones move slowly at great heights. Our air defence radar works at lower altitudes, so that's why we're missing picking them up. That's why we're missing them.
And of course, they didn't rule out yesterday or the day before that they could be other types of UFOs or aliens, which was bizarre why they didn't rule that out when they came to it. But it's quite interesting also just in terms of our defence strategy with China. Rishi Sunak is being told to ramp it up, essentially, and designate China as a threat, in inverted commas. And we've got the security strategy coming out next month, I think, or within a few weeks. So that may focus on China more than it would have otherwise. Liz Truss is set to go to Japan. She's going to be talking about how we need to get tough on China. And Ian Duncan-Smith is also out and about talking about how we need to get tough on China. So there's quite a lot of pressure on Rishi Sunak, but he'll be thinking about the Treasury as well and the fact that they're our 4th largest trading partner. So
China does
stuff to balance
as a major threat. There's no question about that. The way it operates in this country, with money, influencing universities and so on, is insidious. And I know from my time as president of Tibet Society and working with the Muslim community in Xinjiang, just how appalling the Chinese government is in terms of its disregard for human rights, disregard for the norms of international diplomacy. So we do have to take it much more seriously than we have done so far.
But we do a lot of trade with them, so we're in a bit of a difficult situation, aren't we?
We are.
Because we need money and we need... So what do we do?
Well, we can trade with people. I mean, we can trade with people we don't like particularly, but we have to just be very, very firm on what we're doing. And we cannot, for example, allow the Chinese to have access to our nuclear facilities, which, a few years ago was being talked about.
yes, there was something about us buying drones from China and how that's a security risk too.
And the police use these drones. And, well, I don't know where we go with all of this, but our television sets, our mobile phones, all sorts of things.
We're pretty vulnerable to sort of Chinese surveillance,
well, if we
are we?
So... What are they looking at? The thing is, what are they looking at? What have they got that they're interested in?
I mean, our military isn't that great, apparently, according to everyone you speak to, so I'm not sure they're going to get top secrets, but who knows?
Norman, yesterday there was a lot of hoo-ha, a lot of talk about water and sewage companies and these utility companies getting off with penalties from the government. And the idea is, if I've picked it up correctly, the government is saying, look, OK, we could fine you, but wouldn't it be better if we just didn't fine you and you had lots of extra money to clear up what you're supposed to have done according to the terms of your licence, and we can all remain friends, so you have got a bit extra money to give to your shareholders or whatever. It's just absolutely amazing. What mess, what was the deal done when we allowed our utility companies to be privatised, our water companies to be privatised? Because they're getting a heck of a deal out of it this lot.
I'm not against privatisation. I think, for example, you could privatise British Airways, which we did, but I'm against privatising essential services like water, which I think should have been kept in the public sector, as they have been in Northern Ireland, I think I'm right in saying, and perhaps even in Scotland. I'm not quite sure about Scotland. But this is a very grubby story on the front of the Times. It's a grubby story because the water companies, I mean, the amount of stuff they're chucking out into the...
horrendous.
370,000 discharges during 2.6 million hours of spill in 2021.
I know.
It's obscene. And in the meantime, they're pretending they're doing something about it and they're not.
Yeah.
And the government's pretending to do something about it and enforce it and they're not. I mean, it's a very shocking story.
Actually, would you, if a water company is doing this and they're doing it consistently without improving, I would say that's a criminal offence.
Well, it may well be. I don't know what the law says on that, but I would hold.
I would make it a law.
Well, indeed, I think there is a case actually, genuinely across the patch, for making the chief executives and the boards of these companies responsible personally for the actions they take.
Well, quite, and they seem to have massive bonuses regardless
about
of
3.7 million
whether they're
pounds.
performing well, which does seem bizarre. But I would just say, and we mentioned this outside in the green room, was where's the regulator when it comes to all this? Ofwat seems to be toothless. It doesn't seem to be making much of a difference.
It all seems to be too cosy.
They're saying that fining them too much would make the price of water go up, but I'm not convinced when they're making such high profits.
Well, no, it just feels like no one's taking responsibility, and the people who are suffering are bathers, wildlife, our countryside. Yeah.
But I think the government ignores us at their peril, to be honest with you, because I just know from polling that's been done, including by Lib Dems actually, this is a really, really serious issue for voters at large. They don't like it, and Tory voters don't like it, by the way.
Yeah. No.
And the government is playing with fire by ignoring it.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
And Sarah was saying, Emily, she was saying, you know, about spillages, and we're led to believe, oh, there was one rogue spillage or 5 rogue spillages or 10 or 20.
Hundreds of thousands.
We're talking about tens of thousands.
Hundreds of thousands.
Hundreds of thousands.
370,000 discharges.
Yeah.
But there was also the issue, was it in the summer, where the pipes were simply leaking on a massive scale. And of course, we always lose a bit of water from leakages, but I think it got to some record high or some new record of the amount of water they're losing too.
Yeah.
So it's all going a bit wrong.
Right, where are we going now, Emily? Households facing biggest council tax rise ever. This is front page of the Express.
Yes.
Millions face a maximum council tax hike. Here's another blooming tax coming our way.
Yeah, this is not looking good either. If you remember, the government decided to lift the cap so that councils could hike up council tax, and that's because a significant number of our councils across the country are either bankrupt or very poorly managing their finances with inflation and energy prices going up, etc., and the needs for social care and so on going up. But people can judge for themselves whether they think their council in particular is good value for money. But it seems like there's a nice little table in the Express on page 5 which shows where there's the highest council tax bills, how high they're going up, the lowest, etc. A lot of the lowest are actually in London. I'm not sure why that is. Perhaps Norman knows. A lot of the highest council tax bills are in more rural areas across the country. So people may be seeing hundreds of pounds more per year, which is yet another expense.
Yes, and my council, my area, I'm afraid to say, is not a nice table for me because fourth in the top list is Lewis, which is my area, and I have to say that I don't see the return for the council tax I pay. But the problem with local councils is that they have been screwed really badly over quite a long period of time by governments of all colours. Yeah. And there's no money. Yeah. And I used to be a council leader in Lewis, actually, many years ago. And we had choices as to what we spend money on. We had real choices. We spent money on the arts and everything else. Now, they're all hollowed out. There's no capacity anywhere. And the money they have got goes to statutory services like adult social care, as it should do, children's services. Anything which is not statutory has got lost. You know, libraries are closing, potholes aren't mended.
Your council tax is £700 more than mine.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Well, let us know what your council tax is, what you think about it, where they're spending the money and how they should be spending the money. Emily, Norman, thank you very much indeed. They'll be back in 40 minutes' time. The mother of the late Archie Battersbee, Holly Dance, has spoken out for the first time since an inquest concluded that he died accidentally in a prank or experiment that went wrong and had not intended to harm himself.
Holly came into the studio to tell us exclusively about her son and how she's coped after a horrific 9-month experience.
Tell us about the conclusion the coroner reached.
So the coroner reached that it was an accident, possibly a prank that's gone wrong, something that isn't uncommon for boys, especially teenage or approaching teenage years, boys to do. You know, they know right from wrong, they know that they shouldn't be doing things, but why do they do it? There is no reason why they do it. They just do it. That was actually what the coroner said.
That was just your boy being a 12-year-old, you think?
Just being a 12-year-old little boy.
What did you learn? Did you learn anything about your son that you didn't know through the coroner's summing up?
The bullying, Archie being bullied, was a massive shock to me. Because Archie always told me everything, and I still feel if it was getting to him to the level that he was worried or concerned, I do think that even if he didn't tell me, he would have told his brother. But had that support been in place at senior school, again, that trusted person, Archie might have been able to tell that person that he was being bullied and talk to, but he didn't have that trusted person.
But you don't believe he took his own life?
It's definitely not. Never.
Why is it definitely not?
I know my child, 100%, never. It's just he loved life and he had his plans for a future. The messages between him and his friends, sort of like the last few weeks between each other, talking about when they're famous, they're going to do this and going to buy this person a car and this person a house, and I'm going to wear this tracksuit and these shorts, and everything was positive.
What went wrong? Was he showing off? Was he parading himself in front of others?
I've got my views on what I think happened that day. I've gone over and over and over in my head, and I think he's climbed the banister in the hallway, and I think he's put this dressing gown over his head. The night before he was playing with the dressing gown in his sister's room. He put it on his forehead and tied it to Lily's feet. Yeah. This is his Lauren's half-sister. And then to the door handle, opening and closing the door handle. And when Lily asked him what he was doing, he just said, I don't know, I'm just bored. And I think because I removed him from school on the 30th of March, because the support wasn't in place, and I was concerned because things were starting to be highlighted. And for the first time in 7 months, and Archie he wasn't getting his support. He's gone from 32.5 hours one-to-one support to 15 minutes at dinner time. The transition is the hardest part for Archie. He doesn't cope with change. So I removed him from the school and called for an education meeting to see why the support wasn't in place. And I just think that he was bored. You know, like the lockdown, you know, there was a couple of messages where Archie and his friends, you know, said about being depressed, you know, which, yes, the whole word depressed is concerning, but I think kids use that word very easy these days, you know, I'm bare depressed, this is how they'll talk. Looking at the messages between him and his friend saying, yeah, same. And this was in the lockdown. Now for Archie to go from being so full of energy and channeling that energy out into all Archie's hobbies to nothing because we're on lockdown, of course you're going to get a child that's not his normal self, you know, but to the point where he would consider taking his life, definitely not, you know. The only thing I could do is obviously take him out for walks.
I know, talking to you, you know, how committed you were to Archie, how much you cared, how much you wanted to make a difference. But I'm sure you examine yourself and what you did and what you didn't do.
Of course I do. I've absolutely ripped myself apart. Nobody could judge me more than I judge myself. I've been through everything I could possibly. Could I have done this different? Could I have done that different? Even Archie's one-to-one teacher at his primary school, she feels the same. She's ripped herself apart, you know. Had I only gone up to the school with him, you know, I think all of us, his sister, you know, all of us have ripped ourselves apart. What could we have done different? That I am pushing for the Archie's Army law. My MP has now proceeded forward with the letter to Steve Barclay, because we was promised a meeting back in July. So we're going to now move, now the inquest is over, we're going to move forward with that.
How much do you miss him?
I feel lost. Like my heart has been ripped out. It's literally the heart of my family. My home don't feel the same. It just feels cold and empty. Just nothing's ever going to be the same again. And if I can avoid this, whether it be via pushing for the SEN and the support within school, because I strongly believe I fought a 4-year, which a lot of people don't know. These people that go on about, oh, she should have supported him more. They haven't got a clue. They don't know me. I spent 4 years already fighting the system to get Archie's education on track and get him into a mainstream school, because he wasn't getting the support. His education healthcare plan was formed over a 2-week period of when me and Archie's dad split up, and all that little boy needed was nurture and support within the school, and he was failed. I spent 4 years fighting that and won that in court and got him into mainstream school, and that little boy proved everybody wrong. And his last headmaster at the inquest described Archie as a success story, and that's how I want Archie remembered, not from the label that he was given when he was 5 years old. I worked so hard with that little boy, and I think that there's so many children and parents that are fighting to get their kids the support in school. I know so many that are fighting to get their kids the support in school. It's just not there, and this is where these kids' lives can be turned around, you know, rather than leave them and then they just become a problem to society when they're older. They can be helped.
Well, good luck to you and what you're trying to achieve, and in memory of your little boy, and he'll live on through all that you achieve. Holly, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
So sad, so heartbreaking, but Holly hopes that, you know, his death won't be in vain, from the point of view that there will be an Archie's law, and that we all should know more about what our children are doing online, what are the perils of being online. This is a completely different world and such a tragedy, and it's so difficult talking to her because she's just riddled with grief,
So
just
emotional.
understandably, yeah.
Absolutely.
Look, we're going to take a break. There's 4 minutes to 7 o'clock. We're talking about spy balloons and lots of other things right after this.
Hello there, very good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Today is looking like a reasonable day for areas further to the east thanks to high pressure that is still generally in charge. But further to the west, we've got weather fronts that are slowly going to push their way in as we move towards the end of the day, and particularly towards the middle of the week. This first weather front is bringing some cloud to Northern Ireland, parts of western Scotland, and could bring a few spots of rain in places. Meanwhile, there is a bit of fog first thing this morning across the southeast. Will be a bit dense to begin with, but should clear its way off and provide some fairly reasonable sunny intervals throughout the day. Temperatures will also be on the mild side thanks to our winds coming up from the south, pulling up mild air from Iberia. So wildly double-digit figures in northern areas of Wales, perhaps Devon and Cornwall as well, seeing highs of 14, perhaps 15 degrees Celsius. The winds, though, will be fairly brisk in the west, and they'll continue to strengthen throughout Tuesday night as this band of rain wants to push its way in. So turning a bit damper here, and the cloud that builds will hold temperatures up across Northern Ireland, parts of western Scotland. Where we hold on to the clearer intervals further to the east, though, there is the risk of a patchy frost developing. We could also see some fog returning overnight, particularly further towards the south and east. Wednesday, then, is a day of watching this weather front gradually push its way eastwards across the UK. Could provide some heavy rain for Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland to begin with, but it will then tend to fizzle out as it moves across England and Wales. The far southeast of England actually holding on to a fairly dry and fine day with a good amount of sunshine, and that will help the temperatures climb to around 13-14 degrees Celsius, but a bit cooler further west where you are underneath that cloud. We'll see further unsettled conditions throughout the rest of this week, particularly strong winds possible in the north on Thursday night and into Friday, but temperatures are going to stay on the mild side. Enjoy your day.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
British fighter jets on standby to shoot down Chinese spy balloons as the Chancellor faces pressure to increase defence spending.
Good morning, it's 6 o'clock on Tuesday, the 14th of February. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Sarah Khan.
And leading that news this morning, Rishi Sunak has pledged to do whatever it takes to keep the country safe, with Typhoon fighter jets ready to shoot down Chinese spy balloons. It follows the downing of a fourth suspected device over the United States.
It comes as the Chancellor faces pressure to raise military spending in his budget next month, with the Defence Secretary reportedly pushing for an £11 billion increase in funding.
70,000 university staff begin a three-day strike today as industrial action continues. The disruption to lectures and seminars will affect 150 universities.
Liverpool fans have been cleared of any wrongdoing after a review of the 2022 Champions League final. UEFA and French authorities were found to be at fault for the policing,
which saw fans gassed as they waited outside the stadium. And 14th of February, today is Valentine's Day, and you've been getting in touch telling us how you're celebrating it, or indeed not celebrating it. Tony says, my wife Dawn and I bring out the same card every year.
I love that.
He says, cook up a supermarket special meal, anything else is pointless. What a romantic you are, Tony. Phil says, Sarah and Eamonn, I've been married 50 years.
Oh, wow.
And I've never bought a card, and I have no intention of doing so, Phil.
But does it do anything? OK, you haven't bought a card, but do you do anything, Phil? Anything at all?
I think it's very sad if you don't sort of at least recognise that there is someone in your life, if you're lucky enough to have someone in your life, or that you can have a little flutter for them, and that, you know, your heart skips a beat, or you have that.
Listen, the thing is, I know people say that Valentine's Day is a commercial and blah, blah, blah. OK, you don't have to get involved with that, but it's about celebrating these little things in life so that you can get through it. You know, because otherwise life is quite dull and dreary.
Yes,
so you've got to have a little spark, but you have to create that yourself. Look how passionate I'm getting about it.
Yeah, no,
because we have to make our own little magic moments every day.
I think you're lucky to have love in your life. And, you know, a lot of people would wish they had love in their life, and they don't. And
Don't wish for it. Love yourself. Go out there, smell the flowers, smell the fresh air. think love.
And give yourself self-love today.
Yes, give yourself self-love.
I'd rather
self-care,
I'd rather have a partner to give love to.
Well, if you haven't got one, but you
rather
know,
than
everybody
love myself.
Everybody can celebrate today.
Oh, here's another romantic. Stephen, complete waste of money. Leave your money in the bank. Money too tight to mention. Oh, come on, somebody who's enjoying it?
You don't need money.
I'll tell you, you do.
You don't need money to celebrate Valentine's Day.
Something lovely. You're right on this point. Listen to this. The actress Joanna Lumley, right? Joanna Lumley still writes love letters to her husband, and they've been married for nearly 40 years, right? She's 76 years of age. She married Stephen Barlow, who's 68, in 1986. Joanna said, "When I'm on the other side of the world, we write to each other. That's been really important for our marriage."
I love that.
I think that's really nice.
It's consistent. It's, you know, it's consistent. It's...
Shows you care.
You care. It's thought. It's writing down your feelings. Those things matter. It's the little things in life that really count, I think.
I always say to my wife, "You'll miss me when I'm gone." I think she will.
What do you mean by that?
I mean that she doesn't appreciate me the way she should. She should be writing me love letters every week.
Do you write her love letters?
I do enough. I do enough. Don't you worry.
You know, it takes two to tango. I keep saying that to you.
You knew. I'm a veritable love machine.
You two are like George and Mildred, honestly. Do you remember George and Mildred?
I remember George and
Mildred. The little sidecar.
I
love George and Mildred.
Eutha Joyce.
Hey?
Eutha Joyce was Mildred, wasn't she?
That's right.
Yeah, Ruth's got teeth like Eutha Joyce.
You talked about her teeth every day this week.
Fine teeth.
Oh, it's only Tuesday.
They're fine specimens of teeth.
You talked about her teeth last week.
Yeah.
You're obsessed with her teeth.
4 minutes past 7. Let's get to the top stories of the day. The Prime Minister has vowed to do whatever it takes to keep the country safe amid threats from Chinese spy balloons.
The Prime Minister said that Typhoon fighter jets were on standby in the event of an incursion after the United States shot down a fourth suspected spy device.
So this comes as the Chancellor faces pressure to increase military spending to tackle aggression by China and Russia. The Defence Secretary Ben Wallace asking for an extra £11 billion in funding.
Well, joining us now is former senior military intelligence officer Philip Ingram.
Philip, it's a big ask from Ben Wallace. I mean, is he whistling in the wind for this one?
Well, it is. I think he is partially whistling in the wind because the MOD is not known for looking after the pennies it's been given very well. It wastes more money than it spends successfully. And I think there has to be a balance. There's no doubt that defence needs more money. 100%. But I think defence needs to also reform itself and prove that it can look after and spend the money it's been given wisely instead of panicking at the last minute and realising that the cupboards are bare.
Yeah, the cupboards are bare. So what sort of threat do you think these spy balloons are? Why are we suddenly just spotting them all over Canada and America and maybe the UK as well?
Well, only one of them has been confirmed as a spy balloon, and the Americans are still pulling the pieces of it out of the Atlantic. The others have all been described as objects with various descriptions of them, including the US Department of Defense not ruling out that they could be from the aliens. However, the White House has ruled that out. The reason why we're suddenly spotting them is they move in a different way to aircraft. They move in a different way to things that are put into the threat databases because they're very slow. They rely on the currents that are there. They're not seen as a threat, certainly where the spy balloon was because the height it was flying at. And therefore, the ground surveillance radars that are monitoring for different threats out there don't pick them up. And once it was identified, they looked at the parameters of what was happening, and they retuned their radars and suddenly went, "Oh, crikey, we can see lots of these sorts of things." And therefore, there's been a bit of an epiphany moment, a retuning of things, and it's amazing what you can see when you do that.
Philip, can I just say, look, I get my kids ready to school. They go off. You know, I'm worried about the bills. I'm worried about food, energy, everything. Now I've got to be worried about Chinese balloons invading our airspace. I mean, should I be worried? I'm watching telly, I turn the news on, and apparently our RAF are there, ready to strike down. I mean, what is this? For me, as an ordinary person, how concerned should I be?
Not in the slightest.
Thank you.
The RAF are on standby for any threat on a daily basis. They've got a quick reaction force that, the pilots are not quite sitting in the cockpit of their aircraft, but they're not far off it. And therefore, if there's any threat that comes into UK airspace, whether it be balloon, and the weather patterns that go across the UK don't make it easy for balloons to come and provide a threat, or whether it be aircraft coming, hostile aircraft coming and probing, and the Russians come and probe UK areas of responsibility fairly frequently. We've got Typhoon fighters ready to be launched, and they are launched on a regular basis to go and intercept these. It is routine. It is something that defence does, and we should not be concerned in the slightest. In fact, we should be grateful that they are managing to keep us safe.
What on earth would the Chinese be looking for? I mean, if you scratch your head and you think, well, why are they so interested?
Well, yeah, intelligence is an interesting game. What you want to do is use as many different collection mechanisms to look at, if necessary, the same target in as many different ways as possible. So the Chinese have got their space-based satellites that are looking at things from an imagery perspective and through other elements of the electromagnetic spectrum. It seems as if this balloon has been carrying some form of sensors as well that would work at a different level. So possibly if there was cloud cover, the balloon would be flying in an area where it could be tuned in an area where the cloud cover wasn't there. They're difficult to steer. They're difficult to get into a place accurately. And it's just another layer of intelligence collection. And intelligence officers, we love different layers. We love different mechanisms. We love pulling it all together because it's like putting together a big jigsaw puzzle, but you don't actually have the picture in the front of the box that tells you what the real answer is.
Or to assemble it. Philip, really appreciate your take on things. Thank you very much indeed for that this morning. Philip Ingram there on that threat or possible threat from Chinese balloons, which to keep you mind at ease. He's basically saying they've been there for years.
But that's what I need context, because there's lots for us to take on board every day with the news. And I understand, OK, we've got them in the air, we're looking after them, but you, Mrs. Khan, do not need to worry about it. We've got it under control. Don't worry about it.
As Philip pointed out there, Tony saying fighter jets are always on standby, fully armed, ready to launch, has been so for decades. Nothing new there, Rishi. John says, Chinese, not only do they make our drones and police cameras and almost everything else, like during the pandemic when we had no PPE, it's about time we brought stuff back in-house and made it in this country.
Yeah, and Eric says, support the nurses and NHS, forget about increasing the defence budget. Our beaches and borders are wide open anyway. Defending the country, currently the idea is laughable.
Here's an interesting point from Andy, saying that defence is about defending. Defending the UK's interests at home and abroad. This covers Navy, Army, Air Force. It means having the latest technology. It means constant training to be the best. It means peacekeeping and disaster relief. It's not all about war or conflict. Yeah. But I still think, the Defence Secretary, he's saying, look, we have got a massive hole to fill here. We've got a different type of war to deal with. We've got this cyber war to deal with particularly. I need 11 billion quid to get up to date with things. I think there's no chance that the Chancellor will grant anywhere near that for defence spending, no matter how much we feel we do.
Can I just quickly, do you remember HS2?
I don't remember it. It's still going.
I know, but this is my point. Why have we spent so much money on that? We should be laying cables down to connect people digitally across the countryside, across the country.
Yes.
What a waste of money.
I don't think it's a waste of money.
I think it is.
What do you think? Would you rather ride on a Victorian transport system then for the rest of your life?
But look how our society has changed. People are working from home. Yes. People are not going into offices. We don't need to be going up and down the country because we're doing businesses in our homes on laptops, on computers. We need cable to keep up with the times, to get people connected. We're not going up and down the country like we used to in the Victorian times.
I need to go up and down the country more and more. I've got football to go to at least once a week. I've got my son who lives in Manchester as well. Right, and I'm stuck here.
That is no excuse to build and spend all that money when you could be actually bringing our country up to date with modern technology. And we need to move with the times and think about the future, and the future is cables.
It's
not roads.
Do you know in Japan they have these bullet trains?
Yeah.
Well, I had 2 hours of my life I will never get back again on Saturday. Never. I watched the worst film ever, and it was called... What was it called? Bullet Train. That's what it was called. Brad Pitt. It was the most horrible, disgusting, awful, stupid film.
So what's this got to do with?
Because they're on a fast train. They're on a bullet like an HS2.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We don't need that.
Well, let me talk about this film.
Right.
I'm saving people's lives. I'm saving people's lives by not wasting their life watching Bullet Train. Pathetic, awful. I paid £7 for it, right, on satellite for it, and I resented it. But my weekend was saved because I then binge-watched Clarkson's Farm. Have you watched that?
No, I've never watched that.
Oh, that's very good. It's very
You
good.
watch a lot of TV.
Well,
I'm working. I'm trying to get the economy going.
I'm incapacitated.
I'm trying to, do my bit to contribute to the economy.
I can't even get out and about. I've got a recliner chair at home that goes. I should bring it to the studio. Brings me down and brings my feet up in the air, so my head's lower than my feet, and I can watch TV through my legs.
Did you really just say that?
I do. My feet go up in the air.
I don't want to know.
That, my 2 feet.
It's too early in the morning for that vision.
I can watch the TV through my feet.
That even looks wrong.
So at 45 degrees, right? Okay.
Let's talk about the economy, shall we?
We
and
shall
jobs
talk about it and why nobody wants them. Why nobody wants these jobs.
Why don't they?
I don't know. High-skilled workers remains a challenge for a lot of industries, yeah, right after the pandemic. So you're a great fan of this working from home nonsense. But latest construction skills network, right, if you want to build houses, you want to build HS2, you want to be an engineer or a brickie or whatever it is, you've got to be outside.
Yes.
So a new report says an extra 225,000 construction workers may be needed by 2027 to meet demands. Where are they?
And our national reporter Theo Chimboka has been to meet apprentices who are joining the industry.
Designed to be a cultural hub, the Outnet space in central London was made to bring back rock and roll in the West End. It's already become an attraction for visitors after taking around 15 years to complete. 4 of those years were project managed by Stephanie as an apprentice.
Just on a Sunday, over the weekend, walking back from a meeting, and you can point through the sky and go, I built that. It was the most rewarding experience. You're working 4 days a week in the office, 1 day a week studying. It's the perfect balance. You're getting a university degree while you're still getting the real life practical theories. You'll be learning about foundations and piling, and then all of a sudden you'll be on site the next day and you'll see like this, and you'll see what they're actually doing on site and how it actually works in the real world.
To make projects like this happen, skilled workers are needed. However, the construction industry is facing some challenges when it comes to recruitment. This data shows that while there has been an increase in demand for workers in all industries, particularly from the beginning of 2021, the demand for construction workers has remained at a higher level. But construction vacancies at the end of 2022 are still nearly twice as high as pre-pandemic levels, showing that in 2023, the industry is still trying to recruit workers in a highly competitive market.
Although the UK is facing a recession this year, according to industry experts in the construction industry, they estimate around 225,000 workers will be needed by 2027, according to the latest Construction Skills Network report. Graduates coming from university play a huge role in the industry, but apprentices are also playing a huge part in getting the necessary skills into the industry.
Bosses say they recognise that recruitment is something they've got to promote and take on more young people. They say apprenticeship programmes are the perfect way to do it.
They get that layered experience so we can build them alongside the shift that is going on realistically, Theo, in terms of where we're pointing, you know. So the traditional services to clients will always be there. As you say, everybody needs property. Everybody needs that property looked at post-COVID. You know, it's become even more of a focus where people don't necessarily need office space.
An increase in flexible working, changes in migration policy and an ageing workforce have made it challenging when it comes to hiring. But taking on apprentices is proving to be a success for many companies as the drive to meet demands continues. Theo Chimboka, GB News.
We want to hear from you today. Why is it unattractive to work outside, to be on a building site? Why can we not get workers to do that? Does Brexit play a role in all of this? Latest unemployment figures, they've just been released. They show that the unemployment rate remains stable. 3.7% up to December. Now, they also show a decrease in full-time employees during the latest 3-month period, but is still above pre-coronavirus levels. Let's go to economic commentator Laurie Laird, who's been reading through this. What have you got to tell us, Laurie?
Interesting report. I think the thing that we've got to look at with this report, two big things here.
Yeah.
One is, you know that so many economic commentators, people like Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, particularly the Bank of England, have been really concerned about what you're talking about, this lack of workers, this number of people leaving the workforce. We've seen a bit of a reversal of that in these latest data. Take these latest data with a grain of salt. These take us through the fourth quarter of last year. So labor data in this country are reported with a big lag. So we're looking at what happened toward the tail end of last year, not more recent data. But this complaint that so many people in government have had about people leaving the workforce, that seems to have started to have reversed in the final quarter. And we've seen a lot more people, young people and older people. And when I say older people, this is how the ONS categorizes us, 55s to 64, people going back into the workforce at a rate that they haven't seen. This is a historically high level of people going from inactivity.
Would you care to hazard a guess as to why that is? Do they just need the money, or what is it?
That is, I mean, there are longer-term surveys that ask people, you know, why did you come out of work? Why have you gone back in? It'll be a while before we get that kind of sort of qualitative information, but that's the assumption. People build up savings through furlough payments during the pandemic. They've now run that down. Inflation is rising. People are saying, gosh, I didn't have as much stashed away as I thought that I had. But I think the really big thing about this report, and I'm still going through it, is the thing that the Bank of England will be looking at is earnings. They'll look at earnings when they decide whether to continue to raise interest rates. And that's not a very pretty picture in this report. Earnings on the surface look like they've fallen to 5.9% on an annual basis. That's a fall. It still means we're well below the level of inflation, but the Bank of England will be happy that wages aren't rising. They think higher wages become inflationary. But all of that's because bonuses fell. If you take out bonuses, private sector bonuses, wages are actually still increasing. That's going to bother the Bank of England a lot. And when they next gather to talk about interest rates, I think that is the number that they'll be concerned about.
And in terms of the UK employment, we're saying that it was at 75.6%, which is higher than the previous 3-month period.
And that reflects what we were speaking about just a couple of moments ago. People who had taken themselves out of the workforce for whatever reason. Maybe they were students, maybe they were looking after someone, maybe they were still getting over COVID, any number of reasons. Those people are starting to creep back into the workforce. And the thing that they tend to look at is not so much the employment rate, the inactivity rate.
Yes.
And that has fallen a bit. We had hit 21.6%. That's a pretty high number, more than 1 in 5.
Inactivity rate?
It's people who have decided not to engage with the workforce at all. So they're not in work or looking for work. And when you get that above 21%, that's more than 1 in 5 of us. That is quite a high number.
I mean, I'm looking at that, I'm guessing, is that people in retirement?
It can be people in retirement, it can be students, it can be somebody who feels that they're not well enough, maybe they're suffering from long COVID. And that's something that the Bank of England and the Treasury are trying to figure out. Why have all of these people said, I'm not engaging anymore?
But the other thing that we have a huge problem with in this country is recruiting highly skilled workers. Do you agree with that?
There certainly seems to be a big mismatch between people who are looking for work, their skill sets, and the skill set needed for some of these vacancies. And you have mentioned construction. And it seems that people who are looking for work don't have the skills to fill these vacancies. I think with construction, and I'm speaking anecdotally now, it does feel like Brexit has had an effect. And I'm talking about people who come to my house to help out with plumbing or any of the
tradesmen.
Tradesmen. They disproportionately for a long time seem to be from Eastern Europe. But this is anecdotally, I don't have numbers on
we'll all
this.
back that up. We all see the difference. Just finally, in conclusion, Laurie, UK as a marketplace, as a place to get employment, what state is the UK in at the moment? And if you are looking to get a job, what should your profession be?
Certainly tradesmen. I mean, we've discussed that. But I think we need to look at, there'll be a lot of headlines on the unemployment rate went up. Unemployment rate is still 3.7%. That is incredibly low. So many countries would envy that. The EU is looking at over 6%, and that's a historical low for them. So even if we discuss unemployment rate and that rising, it's still very, very low. Vacancies are beginning to fall. That means that more people are coming into the workforce, or maybe companies aren't advertising as much, but there still seem to be plenty of jobs. Whether people looking for them have the right skills is another question.
OK, Laurie, thanks. You'll continue to crunch those numbers and analyse those employment figures.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much indeed. Very, very interesting. We're going to go to the break there. We're going to follow up on the search for Nicola Bulley. We're going to be speaking live to one of her neighbours as to her theories about what has happened to Nicola right after this. Please don't go away.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Nicola Bulley's next-door neighbour has spoken out about her disappearance for the first time, saying the strength of her close friend's partner, Paul, has shown is nothing short of a miracle.
Well, having lived next door to Nicola for 5 years, the families are close, with Charlotte and Nicola's children regularly playing outside together. Charlotte joins us now, Charlotte Drake joins us now to tell us how she's feeling. Charlotte, we all feel we know Nicola, we all feel that we're invested in her, we all feel she could live in our street as well, and her face over all the news bulletins and the newspapers, whatever. But you did know her. We don't know her. We think we know her. What sort of person is she?
I think the fact that people think they know her, they do know her, because everybody that's sharing what we're sharing about her is exactly how she is. She would do anything for anybody. She, on our street, we're only a street of five houses, and if you need anything, if you need any advice, if you need anything for the children, she's there. So I think that's why it's touched so many people's hearts, because she is exactly how people are painting the picture to be.
Charlotte, you know her partner Paul very well and her children. How are they coping?
It's just an impossible situation to put yourself in, and to see what they're going through every single day, trying to remain positive, trying to wait for news, wait for evidence, wait for just anything that they can discuss with the children. It's really heartbreaking to see what the whole family are going through on a daily basis, and it's just a constant cycle that the whole community is feeling for them every single day.
I know, and we all want it resolved, hopefully for the best. We hope she's just gone missing more than anything else. What effect does this have on you and your habits and people that you know living in the street or the community? You must all really think twice about walking by that river, or what is that apprehension like?
We've said it from day one. We've all done that walk. We all walk that river. We're all mums. We all do the drop off. We all don't think that we will go and do a walk like that and not come back. So it's really, really hit all mums, all women, I would say, in the area that do that, because we've all done it and we've all managed to not fall in. We know the terrain. It's not a walk that you don't know. And so it's really unnerved people, especially with the lack of evidence.
None of us know what's happened. We can all play at being amateur detectives, but somebody like you, who is a next-door neighbour, and you know her, and you'll have seen her with the door camera footage, packing up the car, putting the dog in the back, putting the kids in the car, heading off to school. You must have an instinct or a theory, or just questions you can't answer. What are the questions you can't answer? What is there eating away at you?
The thing that's eating away, I think, all of us on the street is it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right that she would be in the water. And we've said that from day one. But obviously there's no evidence for any of the avenues of questioning. So it's really, where are her keys? Where are all these different things of hers? How can you just vanish into thin air? It seems impossible, and yet here we are.
And yet her phone was there, the dog harness was there, her Fitbit was there. Quite strange things. I mean, again, as I say, we're all trying to match it together. Why would this happen? Why would she have left this and not that? What do you say to that?
Well, her Fitbit wasn't there. They've still not found the Fitbit. So they're trying to track that, I believe. Her keys are believed to still be on her person. So for me, the keys, if they've dropped out anywhere, if anybody's found those, obviously that description hasn't come out. So if they've been handed into a garage, washed up somewhere, a lot of people won't know that they're related to the case. So for me, like something like that could drop out is quite key. But obviously the phone was left on the bench. The bench is quite far from the river, so to fall in, it's quite an accomplishment to fall in from that far back.
Charlotte, there's obviously a lot of police visibility in your community now? It's, you know, the time is ticking day by day. What are the feelings and the relationship like between, you know, your community and the police? Are people getting frustrated? You know, because this will be impacting your life and as you know it.
I think from my interactions with Paul and Emma and seeing the police, you know, they only have good things to say. They say they're working really hard to just try and find anything that can lead us. You know, we're all working towards the same goal. It's not a competition who can get the evidence first. We all just want the same thing, which is to bring Nikki back.
Yeah. And, you know, Charlotte, if you walk out your front door today, you could bump into Paul, you could see him. Must be very difficult for you, you know, with the amount of days that have passed to strike up a conversation, or what do you say to him? What do you say?
Well, we're in regular contact with Paul next door. You know, we're helping with the girls. We're just trying to support as much as we can because we are a small row of houses and we see each other every day. Paul is remaining positive. He has to remain positive for the girls. Yeah. And so for him, every single day is a chance to find something new, and we all support that, and we'll all keep going until there's something. Someone has to know something.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. As you say, keep going. Our thoughts are with you. Our thoughts are with Paul and the girls. And most of all, our thoughts are about Nicola, and hopefully we find her soon. She turns up safe and well. Charlotte, thanks for talking to us. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you. Charlotte Drake, Nicola Bulley's neighbour and friend there, giving you an insight into what happens. So while Miss Sarah goes somewhere...
Excuse me, sorry.
We'll take a break, and when we're going to do that, we're going through the newspapers with Norman Baker and Emily Carver right after this. Do you want to slap on the...
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamonn Holmes, back on the TV
Surprised
with me this morning.
even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh, good.
Already to bless.
Oh, Eamonn. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamonn Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Let's go through the newspapers now. We do it in the company of Norman Baker and Emily Carver. And Emily, you want to begin front page of The Sun and utility warehouse treated to 8-day holiday. Why?
Yes, so The Sun wants us to be outraged about this. This is their exclusive. I think they must have sent a reporter to the Maldives to track down these utility warehouse agents. They're self-employed, but they're hired by utility warehouse. Anyway, one of the perks is that if they sign up 4 or more customers per month, new customers, they get a trip to an exotic location. And we're supposed to be angry about this because they assume that utility warehouse is making big profits.
What is utility warehouse? Forgive me.
Well, the thing is, it's not an energy producer. It's an energy supplier, but it also supplies things like insurance or other utilities. I can't think of any right now, from besides insurance.
Did your mobile phones?
The mobile phone insurance, that sort of thing, house insurance, and all sorts. But people are saying that this doesn't sit right because of the cost of living, that these people are going off to the Maldives. But these are self-employed. These are self-employed agents who work for utility warehouse. I don't suppose they're on big bucks anyway. This is just one of the perks to try and recruit them.
You've hit your target. You've signed up few people. This is your bonus.
Exactly.
That's what happens if you're.
Exactly.
You work for yourself if you...
But apparently they were being a bit annoying. They were trying to sign up people in the Maldives resort, so handing out...
they're driven. They're driven. God, sounds like Future Apprentice.
Well, there you go. So people have different views on that. I personally think it's quite a nice thing to give people a perk if they're doing a good job.
I think you and I should go and investigate this in the Maldives.
I would love to, Norman.
Yeah.
Talking about a bit of a perk, the Mirror reports on the head of British Gas. He's been given a offered a £1.6 million bonus, and he's been asked to reject it, Norman.
Look, I mean, this is a tin ear. If you've ever heard of a tin ear, this is one of them. 1.6 million bonus. His salary already is £795,000 a year. This is British Gas, whose bills are going through the roof for people at the moment. Soaring profits British Gas have got. At the same time, they've been cutting off people and forcing them to have prepayment meters installed. The energy prices have rocketed. I mean, the guy is just completely out of touch with his customers.
Well, except he's doing what he's doing for his shareholders, isn't he?
Yes.
So he's delivering on that front.
He is delivering on that front, and they'll be very happy because they're getting record profits at the same time as people can't afford to pay their bills.
So you can do the right thing, or you can do the moral thing, or you can do what the instructions tell you to do on the packet. Do you think there should be a bit of higher ground here and this man say, look, I am entitled to this, but I'm not going to take it because other people have suffered?
Yes, I do. And I think if you look at the gap between the people who are earning the most money in society and the people who are earning normal wages, that gap's got bigger and bigger in recent years. And I think one of the reasons why people are so incensed and pushing for wage increases is because you see people at the top, coining it.
Yes.
I don't think... Yeah, I do agree with you to some extent, but I don't think the public or the media should be telling companies how much they pay people in bonuses. I mean, we get angry at when Tesco boss gets a bumper bonus. We get angry when, the M&S boss does or whatever. There's always ways of saying, oh, no, he doesn't deserve that money. But it is one of those things, yes, as being in a free market, someone will be earning more than you.
I'm very happy people earn more than me or more than the average. But I just think in a democracy, actually, people are entitled to say, for utility, I'm sorry, we don't want this. They should make their voices heard.
Well, to be fair, British Gas, they haven't been doing a great job in terms of their own PR. So perhaps this could be a bit of a boost if he said, you know what, I'm going to take a bit of a smaller bonus this year.
Yeah.
But I don't think he'll hand it all back.
No,
It's an interesting debate because I think our society has got to, at some point, talk about morals before profits.
Yeah.
I don't know when we get into that debate, but I think, you know, if I work in the private sector, a lot of people give a lot back to society. We never pick that up. We talk about how much they take home, but we don't see the social corporate responsibility they have as well.
Yeah,
which they fund a lot of, and they give a lot to charity and help and create more jobs.
And they are supplying something we all need. Yes, they're making a lot of money out of it at the moment, but they weren't 2 years ago when the pandemic hit.
Then you can blame the government for that because they should, be subsidising it a little bit.
Well, let's continue the talk about money, Norman. The Eye reporting on page 4. Rail strikes could last into the autumn if latest offer is rejected. This is an interminable dispute.
It is.
With no appetite, seemingly, to settle it.
No, and the government has made what it says is its final offer. I believe them, actually. I don't think they're bluffing. I think this is a final offer of 9% over 2 years. It may not be the most generous offer given inflation, but it is a final offer.
So 9% over 2 years is what, 4.5% a year?
Yeah, effectively, which is not brilliant. And they're also requiring, which is, I think they're right to do, changes to terms and conditions for the rail workers. I think where Mick Lynch has gone wrong, the RMT leader, is he hasn't put this to a vote of the members. And I've been speaking to RMT members in my transport role, and first of all, they would have voted to accept it. And secondly, they're furious they've not been given a vote. And this is the same mistake Arthur Scargill made in the 1980s with the coal miners. You need to put these matters to the membership. And if Mick Lynch is very secure in his position, then presumably his members will reject it. But they're not being given a chance to do so.
It's not very democratic, that, is it?
It's not democratic, no.
No, it's becoming clearer by the day that he's using this for his own political agenda, because if he did care about his members so much, he would, as you say, put it to them.
Emily, let's talk about the cancel culture. In the Times, the actress Kate Blanchett, what's her problem?
Well, she's spoken out against cancel culture, so I think she's done something good. We're seeing more sort of celebrities come out and speak out against cancel culture. It seems that there's a shift now. People are willing to put their heads above the parapet and say, hang on, we shouldn't be cancelling things just because we find them offensive. They're talking in particular about art, and in particular, Pablo Picasso.
Is she in a film about cancel culture?
Well, I don't know if she's in a film about it, but she says... Well, she was recently in a film playing a narcissist composer-conductor who was accused of sexual abuse.
That's the one, yeah.
I haven't seen it. But anyway, she used that as a platform to then voice her criticism over people wanting to cancel things. But we see this so much. If you go to an art gallery now, there's all these sort of warnings about the content potentially being offensive or not of being of a different time, and that you have to take it not at face value necessarily, but look at all the things that could be deemed offensive. It does feel a bit much
I don't mind
to cancel artwork.
I don't mind the clarification because I can give context to what you see.
But they're quite biased normally. They're not entirely objective.
Exactly. And I also think that you've got to respect art in its widest sense, including music, for the time it was created, to understand it properly. There's no point trying to imply, 2022, 2023 morals to something that was created 600 years ago. It just doesn't work that way. And I was saying off-air, Eamonn, that, I host 3 radio shows a week on music shows a week. And one of the tracks I wanted to play was a track called Melting Pot by Blue Mink, which is a song about racial harmony. Take a piece of white man, dress him up in brown skin, add a bit of blue blood. People know the song. It's a great kind of unifying song. We're not allowed to play it now because it uses a word which was quite normal at the time, but is now deemed to be pejorative to Chinese people. Yeah. And I just think it's such a tragedy that we can't play a song which is actually promoting racial harmony.
Yeah. Excuse my ignorance. Picasso. What's the problem with Picasso?
Well, apparently he was very brutal in his relationships with women. Apparently
it's not
he submitted
to do with his
women.
Art, it's to do with his personal life.
Yes, his personal life. Submitted women to animal sexuality, tamed them, bewitched them, ingested them and crushed them onto his hands.
Where does it stop and where does it start?
Yeah, but I mean, this is a very dangerous road to go down because you cannot judge, I don't think anyway, at someone's personal behaviour as part of their art.
But we do all the time now.
I know we do,
You know,
but we
if
shouldn't do.
People are guilty by association, even.
And again, if you look at my stuff on the radio, my radio shows, we do play in Ike Turner, who is guilty of
domestic abuse.
Domestic abuse. We play people who've been guilty of murder. You know, Larry Williams, I think it was one of them. Do you think he's dead? So I'm not libeling him. But we can't play people who've been paedophiles. The music must exist in its own right.
Guys,
irrespective of the individual.
I unfortunately have got to cancel you two until 8:30. Thank you very much indeed. 12 minutes now before 8, farmers are being encouraged to talk about their mental health in an effort to improve safety at work.
Despite accounting for only 1% of the workforce, nearly 1/5 of workplace deaths happen on farms.
Well, this week the Farm Safety Foundation launches its annual Mind Your Head campaign. Will Hollis with the details.
The fields of Cambridgeshire are the flattest in the country, but farming here still comes with a mountain of responsibility. Matt's been a farmer for 10 years.
Days of the week mean very little to me. It doesn't really matter whether it's a Sunday, a Wednesday, I'll be out there working, doing whatever.
Aged 28, he's part of Britain's army of young farmers. He keeps a few pigs, but mainly sheep here in Whittlesey, where he and his wife Floss and their dogs have settled.
Out of the dogs, we've got 6 collies, 4 of which work or will work, one of which is a puppy at the minute.
No, hold on, we've got 7 collies now.
On the surface, life is idyllic. Yet Matt says, beneath, the constant pressures of living and working this way are straining his mental health.
You have to get up out of bed. You have to go out there and do it. It's a have to rather than a want to sometimes.
Soaring inflation and other industry problems are piling onto an already demanding lifestyle. Britain relies on its farmers to feed the country, but the Farm Safety Foundation says poor mental health is putting the people in our most important industry at risk.
Well, farmers are very good at looking after their livestock, their land and their machinery. They're just not very good at looking after themselves.
Steph is from the charity. This week it's running the mental health campaign Mind Your Head.
You're probably more distracted, lack of concentration. Now you pair that up with a large machine that you're working with or an animal that you're working with, and the one thing that could cause that level of distraction could end up with a life-changing and potentially life-ending injury.
In 2021, 22 farmers were killed while working. In the same year, 36 farmers took their own lives in England and Wales. In a statement, Farming Minister Mark Spencer said, "Mental health awareness is an important issue for farming and rural communities, which is why I'm proud to support the Mind Your Head campaign." Matt says he wouldn't change career. Farming offers a freedom few other jobs can. He's discovering ways to beat back anxiety and depression.
Even if it feels bad now, I'm going to be able to get through that, and you just have to believe in your own mind that you can get through it.
As hard as working outdoors can be, the toughest challenge is often inside of your mind. Will Hollis, GB News in Whittlesey.
If you are a farmer, you work at a farm, you live on a farm, our respect to you as a farm family, hard life, and they're highlighting the isolation of it. Get in touch, let us know what you think. Back pages stack up like this. Telegraph claims that the Qatari conglomerate interested in buying Manchester United will spark a bidding war, as Elon Musk is now the latest possible investor to be linked with a takeover attempt. Here's The Guardian, leading on the exoneration of Liverpool fans after an inquest found that UEFA was at fault for the problems witnessed at the 2022 Champions League final. I think the police are also implicated in that as well, the French police. And the Mail has more good news for Liverpool fans after the Reds ended their 4-match winless streak, beating Everton in the Liverpool derby 2-0 last night. Paul Coit with his take on that one. Paul, good morning to you.
Good morning. Well, we want to start with Liverpool?
Yeah.
Liverpool-Everton. I think a lot of us had hope that Everton might be able to do something because Liverpool were not looking good. Everton now, Sean Dyche has come in, has taken over as manager, and you're thinking maybe this is going to be the new manager bounce. They're going to Anfield, never have a better time to do it. But at the end of the day, and there's a phrase I hate to use, but it was pretty much, it was just everything was resumed. Liverpool looked much, much better. And Everton, I just thought, were pretty poor. I think it's going to be difficult for Sean Dyche. It's Liverpool, though, after all, at Anfield, so...
But you've got Everton now down, floundering in that lower end of the table.
They are.
Southampton down there, Leeds down there as well. The ex-Leeds manager, the guy just recently sacked, Jesse Marsh, now being linked with Nathan Jones's job at Southampton.
It's so bizarre.
So you would go from a struggling team to a struggling team.
It's the crazy merry-go-round of managerial appointments and sacking. So yes, Leeds had a horrendous time. So Jesse Marsh had to go. They're now looking for a new manager. And Southampton, like you say, Nathan Jones, he was only in the job a very short space of time. So they're thinking, what do? We need someone who's dynamic, maybe someone who's young, someone that's going to galvanise the team. Let's go with Jesse Marsh, although Leeds hasn't worked there.
Yeah, nothing against Jesse Marsh at all, but you would just logically look and say, well, he hasn't been able to save Leeds from the lower area. Why would he be able to bring Southampton up from the bottom place?
Who knows? I mean, it might even be... There's a thing with management, isn't there? There's this football nous and how good you are with football, but also important what you're like as a manager. And as far as Southampton is concerned, it looked like Nathan Jones had just lost the dressing room. Maybe Jesse Marsh may be able to get them playing. But the other thing is Neil Warnock. Neil Warnock is now back.
Is Neil not gone to Huddersfield?
He's gone to Huddersfield.
Yeah.
So
he watches us in the morning.
Does he?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he's probably a bit busy now. I don't know. Well, he's probably on his way to work again. So he'd retired last year, and so age 74, and thought, OK, well, this is it. It's all over for me. Huddersfield come calling, who he managed 30 years ago, and so he's now gone back to Huddersfield.
I love talking to him. I love, finding out his philosophies about things and whatever. He's no nonsense, old school.
Exactly. Proper football man, and I love to hear him talk as well. I love it when you hear Neil Warnock saying, it's not, if we're going to put a smile on faces, it's going to be a lovely family club. Whereas then you see him in the dressing room screaming and shouting at players. But anyway, we wish him well, though. He's come back to Huddersfield.
Do you, Neil? You don't really mean it. You don't. Champions League preview tonight.
Yeah, a couple of big games. Yeah. Firstly, Tottenham Hotspur playing away at AC Milan. There was the win 11 years ago, Gattuso in the fight with Joe Jordan. Do you remember Joe Jordan with them head-to-head? So, anyway, it's a huge game that Spurs need to win.
I remember when he didn't have teeth.
I remember when he didn't have teeth. He still did, but I think he even thought at the end of that game against AC Milan back 11 years ago that there was Gattuso. I don't know if you remember it, because Spurs won 1-0 at the San Siro, and then it was a little argy-bargy after Gattuso had done a bad foul on Chorluka, the Spurs player. And so Joe was up there, so Gattuso goes run out. He's probably half his age, and Joe was only 60 at the point. And so Joe's taking his glasses off, and it was all... That was your old-style football. It was just like Joe playing all over again. But anyway, we don't know what we're going to get from Spurs. Go and beat Man City, lose to Leicester in the week. You've got Antonio Conte saying, well, I'm not sure whether the players, whether they've actually got the stomach for it, whether they buckle under pressure. I don't know whether it's him playing games with his players or whether he's telling the truth or where we stand with it. But it could go one way or the other. Paul, and it's Bayern Munich as well, who are playing PSG tonight.
Of course, my friend. Thank you very much indeed. Pleasure. Really good talking to you. Paul Coit there with what's happening sports-wise.
After the break, we'll have more on Rishi Sunak's vow to protect the UK from Chinese spy balloons.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview channel 236.
And YouView channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store? You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m, Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
British fighter jets on standby to shoot down Chinese spy balloons as the Chancellor faces pressure to increase defence spending.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock on Tuesday the 14th of February. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Sarah Khan.
And on this Valentine's Day, thank you for your company. Leading the news this morning, Rishi Sunak has pledged to do whatever it takes to keep the country safe, with Typhoon fighter jets ready to shoot down Chinese spy balloons. It follows the dawning of a fourth suspected device over the USA.
It comes as the Chancellor faces pressure to raise military spending in his budget next month, with the Defence Secretary reportedly pushing for an £11 billion increase in funding.
70,000 university staff begin a three-day strike today as industrial action continues. The disruption to lectures and seminars will affect 150 universities.
And could the UK be facing a cost of loving crisis? Almost half of Brits who want to get engaged say they can't because it's simply too expensive. We'll find out if it's possible to do a romance on a budget.
So it is Valentine's Day. Get in touch, let us know your stories. A lot of you are not very romantic, it has to be said. What I think about that, about people not being able to afford to get engaged or get married or whatever, there's some lovely, love conquers all. That's what I think. Love, if there's a will, there's a way. And maybe you don't need the big ceremonies and you don't need the big rings or whatever it is. You just need, as the Beatles said, didn't they? All you need is love. Da, da, da,
You picked up that, the black and white, your favourite actor, Ginger Rogers. Could watch a nice...
Cary Grant.
Cary Grant.
Cary Grant,
You know, watch a nice black and white movie, snuggle up.
Well, he was the most charming, debonair actor. I mean, I think George Clooney's the man who inherits his shoes.
Yeah.
Nowadays, they look very, very alike.
Well, we went out for lunch yesterday and somebody went, "Oh, hello, I recognise you." And you went, "Yeah, I'm George Clooney." And I thought, in your dreams...
In her head, do you think she thought...
She was shocked that you said that.
I could see, she said to me, "Hello," she said, "I recognise you." And I said, "George Clooney, pleased to meet you."
She thought, never mind your crutches, you need a white stick.
No, she didn't say no, did she?
Well, she was shocked. She didn't know what to say.
She said, "It is George. It is George." Him and I have never been seen together in the same room, you know.
Carry on, I've heard this joke before.
Okay. Anyway, top story this morning. Prime Minister has vowed to do whatever it takes, in his words, to keep the country safe amid threats from Chinese spy balloons.
The Prime Minister said that Typhoon fighter jets were on standby in the event of an incursion after the United States shot down a fourth UFO.
So, meanwhile, you've got the Chancellor facing pressure to increase military spending to tackle aggression from China, from Russia. The Defence Secretary is asking for an extra £11 billion in funding, should he get it. Joining us now, Assistant Editor of The Spectator, Cindy Yu. Cindy, the thing is, it depends. I mean, we've got all this talk now about Chinese spy balloons or whatever they're doing up there. It suddenly seems to come as a big surprise to people that it's up there. Now we're hearing that those balloons from China may have been in use for many years.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the fundamental problem with all of this is that now we civilians are seeing the kind of espionage that's happening with a mix of high and low tech. But surely you would think this was happening all the time. And surely you would think that the US is doing, maybe not exactly the same, using exactly the same technology, but pretty much trying to gather the same kind of intelligence about China. That's just what states do.
It's what states do, and all this shock, feigned outrage from governments. Oh, my goodness. So someone's twigged onto it and they said, well, we'll show you, we'll do something about it. I mean, they've had to be pretty stupid not to see a balloon the size of a bus up in the sky,
exactly.
you know, dangling there and taking pictures and whatever it is. So a lot of these things are allowed to happen. Now they're just saying, well, OK, somebody spotted it, so we'll have to be seen to shoot them down.
I think the problem here was the political atmosphere happening in the US.
I was going to say, why now? Why now?
Because that was when Blinken was going to go visit China. And clearly, this balloon had made it onto the news. And in such a sensitive time, you had American politicians really kind of jumping on the bandwagon and saying, we can't possibly have friendly relations with China, given they're spying on us. Well, newsflash, of course they're spying on us, and we're spying on them. But that's not the reason to say, you know, hands up, let's not do anything. But it is just to say, you know, I think everyone needs to calm down a little bit. It's going to be OK. You know, you can shoot these things down, or you can be careful about the kind of intelligence you let leak when you know that they're overhead. So there are all sorts of ways, and, you know, as three civilians sitting around a panel, we don't know the full intelligence gathering that's happening behind the scenes. We don't have the clearance for that, but they definitely know more than they're letting on.
Cindy, I wanted to take your opinion on this story about the hotel in Knowsley, is it? Let me just find my page. Knowsley. And the fact that there's these far-right demonstrations out. There's been a lot of call now from the charities saying the government must step in and say that this kind of violence is just not acceptable. And do you think they will? Do you think they will come out and say that?
Well, I hope so, but I don't know what that would really do, you know, in terms of the kind of the ethnic strife that's going on at the moment. I mean, short of really fixing the asylum system, something that we've talked about on the show before.
The point is that these are people who have entered the country, they're being housed, they're asylum seekers, they've already gone through probably a lot of trauma, and we are allowing people outside of, they're very vulnerable people, outside of their building, you know, being quite violent and shouting abuse. Surely that is, our government does have a duty of care, and they must come out and put a stand against this, because otherwise it's allowed to erupt in other parts of the country.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I totally agree with that. But the problem is that they're being housed in accommodation like hotels and other places that were just never meant for this kind of stuff. You know, they're not in asylum centres anymore because we have too many of them. So the problem is, I think, still fundamentally a backlog in the system. That means that you're. I mean, I think in those attacks that actually members of the public were hurt as well, because these facilities are just not meant for that. The hotels were always place a backstop. And I don't know, I'd rather see the government actually do something to fix the backlog and make sure that people are housing appropriately rather than putting hotels all across the country.
Cindy, the Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, we're getting reports today. He's saying, look, I've had enough of this. We need to fund, he's saying to the Chancellor, the defence budget. We need to up the defence budget. And we're talking about £11 billion he's requested in extra terms. I'm just talking about the surveillance balloons. This shows, and Sarah was talking about this earlier, that maybe it's a different type of defence budget we need for different requirements. Do you think that's so? Rather than buying tanks on the ground or new warships or whatever it happens to be, is it all about, what is it called, cybersecurity?
Technology and cybersecurity.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I mean, I think that a quarter of the defence budget currently goes on personnel, and then the rest goes on to equipment. And I don't know how much the software-hardware split is within that. But I think Ben Wallace is doing a bit of a Zelensky himself, taking the war, using it as a chance to really hammer home his need for more resources. But, all government departments need more resources. Britain already spends 2.1% of its GDP on defence. In situations like this, that we're talking about the grander scheme of things, this Cold War between the US and China, I think we do need to be careful about escalation, and that doesn't mean we don't fund defence, but it means that we don't fund defence above all else. I mean, we do.
No one's
have
going to go to war
crisis.
over a few balloons, are they?
Well, I hope not. I mean, some of the rhetoric coming from the US side, especially the more hawkish side of American politicians, it is kind of scary. I mean, Rishi Sunak himself saying we need to keep us safe and we're on hand to shoot down balloons. The balloons are not here to threaten any lives. They're here for intelligence gathering at most.
And if we knew what was going on around Taiwan, around Japan, how China feels threatened by what the USA does, the USA just owns that whole area in terms of these islands and things that are out there. They've got bases absolutely everywhere. But Sarah was saying that you wake up of a day and you've got things to worry about, getting the kids to school, getting your makeup on, whatever it happens to do, have your breakfast. And you're a bit frightened by what you're
Well, I'm not frightened, but I feel this is a little wedge into something bigger that they're going to announce later on. So they're just making us aware, be careful, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I'm not being silly. This could be a wedge to another war. I don't know. But it's kind of, why are you telling me this? Because I've got loads of other things. And at the moment, it's not really interfering with my life. I don't need to worry about it. Why are you trying to say this now, right now?
Look, I think with all of these things in politics, it could be more cock-up rather than conspiracy. So the Chinese may at some point, Xi Jinping may have some point have signed off an intelligence balloons programme. Somewhere down the line, one of the lower officials said, oh, we'll fly a trajectory over North America. I doubt that the man on top really kind of explicitly signed that off necessarily. Or perhaps it does float off course, whatever it is. There's a cock-up there. There's also a cock-up in the sense that the Blinken visit would have been really good for China. And this has completely scuppered that. So the timing was bad. Then on the American side, once it gets into the media, it's very, very hard to climb down from, especially Biden, who always has to demonstrate his hawkish credentials on China. And so he has to do something. And so he has to shoot them down. And then they start looking for more, and then they can find more. So all of these things, I think there's just a mixture of factors that are less likely to be conspiracy and more likely just to be politicians kind of satisfying their domestic demands, satisfying their party demands, all of these things that happen on both sides.
Yeah. Well, Cindy, you'll be interested in this next report that we've got here because yesterday, amongst denials or explanations about what these balloons were all about, a US top military guy failed to rule out aliens being behind what was shot down. You see, you immediately laughed there. You see, I immediately think they know what's there.
They know it's aliens.
Why are you laughing? They know that there are. They know this is not aliens, but they know that there are. You see, you don't agree, obviously.
I don't agree either.
Okay. That's because you don't want to agree, because you don't want to think of the fact that we're being watched elsewhere. However, what did we do? We sent our reporter, Paul Hawkins, to Bonsall. Bonsall is a village in Derbyshire, which has a reputation of being a UFO hotspot. 19 sightings reported by locals there in the past 20 years or so, Paul.
Yeah, that's right, Eamonn. 19 sightings. Not sure why they're coming here. To be honest, we're about 850 feet up in the Derbyshire Dales on the edge of the Peak District. We arrived here very late last night. The sky was unbelievably clear. You could see everything. So maybe it's just a case that you can see more rather than this is the spot where they want to visit. To be honest, it's such a beautiful part of the country. You'd forgive ET for arriving here, to be honest. But this is the Barley Mow pub. This is one of the pubs that for a while had a tour guide. People used to come here and get tours of the Derbyshire Dales by the previous landlord to find out where UFOs could be seen, that kind of thing. Here's the lady who's been here more and knows more about it. Colette, thanks for speaking to us.
Welcome.
First of all, why is Bonsall Britain's UFO hotspot?
Well, it would be due to the number of sightings there's been really over the years, since the early 1940s, madly enough. I'm from Manchester originally. I've been in the village just over 20 years.
Yeah.
And I've owned the pub for 14 years.
Yeah.
And when I first came to the village, I started hearing about all these stories. And then it's just carried on, and there was more stories in the past that...
But you've not seen one yourself, have you?
Not yet, but I'm hoping to. I mean, you know, it would be good. But we get people coming from all over, literally. America, Canada, Australia, crew, everywhere really. There's been sort of quite a lot of more famous sightings. The one that sort of reignited all the interest.
If we just go over to the table, just come over here. If you just have a look over here. There's, this is one of the more famous ones.
Yes.
20 years ago or so.
Yeah. It was a lady who just lives over in the next hamlet, and she was. It was like 2001, and she captured this image, and she was sort of filming. Her husband was there, and the image it was sort of where she was filming. Her hands started shaking because her adrenaline started pumping in, and she was savvy enough to get it verified by a lab. She had it locked away in a vault. The news went sort of local, then national, and the story is that eventually NASA came and offered a huge amount of money for it. The reason being it was identical to objects that were being seen by a US space shuttle and American airline pilots at the same time. So quite wild, really. I mean, that just blew everything off. But there has been, stories I've heard from very sort of, reticent farmers in the village who don't really, want to make great conversation as such. That you'd be surprised, going back to sort of the late 60s, early 70s. So, it's quite interesting, really.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. And just show us very quickly, if we could just go, if we just have a little turn around here, you've got a little sign here. You'll like this, Eamonn. This is for people who want to come into the pub, see? So they're ready and they're waiting in case there is first contact here in the pub. There you go. Aliens, please park your spaceships in vertical stacks so you can leave room. Very considerate, I think.
First contact, there we go. Thank you very much indeed. Well, you never know. But then you think that's all could be balloons.
Well, I mean, it's obvious now. Now we know what it is. It's all the balloons.
It's not all the balloons.
The Chinese have been
Do you ever
sending
watch
over.
the footage? Do you ever watch the footage online? We're being watched. We're being upset. Well, you just choose not to believe.
With you?
You actually don't believe that there are.
I haven't got
UFOs or
time to
aliens.
believe. I'm a busy working mum. The only thing I believe, right, is my hot water bottle at night is keeping me warm. That's all. And I can put food on the table. I can pay the bills.
Well,
I have not got space in my head to think about UFOs.
Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. And all that'll be natural, that'll be normal soon. But what I'm going to say to you is, when you are abducted, don't be looking for me. Don't get Steve to be phoning me and saying, Eamonn, put out an appeal for her. I'll say she didn't believe Steve. And then the aliens came and abducted her.
Any alien out there, I do not believe in you.
Well, when they're
Anyway.
experimenting on your body.
What I do believe in is education. That's very important because 70,000 lecturers, librarians and admin staff are set to strike across 150 universities today.
That's a lot of universities.
That's a lot.
2 years after students' education was disrupted by COVID. Joining us now, Liv Fossey. Liv is a student at King's College London. Liv, good morning to you. How's this all affecting you today? You could well do without this, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. I have had a whirl of an experience, to be honest. It wasn't what I thought I was going to expect. I was the year who had their A-levels predicted by their teachers, and then I had COVID, and now I have strikes. And the strikes did affect students pre-COVID, but for my year, it's just been very disruptive. I only actually have 3 weeks of full teaching left for this semester. My friend worked it out yesterday. But I'm still expected to do the same exams at the end. So that I would do the same exam as someone who's had 10 weeks of full teaching. And I just don't think that's fair, especially as, you know, I paid a lot of money to be here. I'm already £43,000 in debt, and that's not even counting how much I'll have by the end. It just doesn't seem worth the experience. And the university seems to be prioritising profit over people, and that's just not acceptable.
I mean, Liv, listening to that, I'm just thinking, if I was a lecturer now, I would actually hold my head in shame, because my duty, the reason I've taken that job on board is because I believe in education and I believe pupils come first. But they will argue, but we need better pay, we need better conditions, and we can't get that unless we, take action.
I think I understand that, because at the end of the day, they are humans first, and they can't do their job if they can't afford to come in, if they can't afford to, you know, have childcare for their children. How are they supposed to do their jobs? And we understand that. But then there's also a certain point at which, as a student, I have to think about myself and how much debt I'm going to be in. You know, I've been told university debt is the best sort of debt to have because, you know, it gets wiped out there. But I want to be able to look back and say, OK, well, this debt that I've been paying into for the next how many years was at least worth it. And to be honest with you, this wasn't even worth £1,000 of the experience. And, you know, I do feel sad for the lecturers because they are getting the brunt of it, but they are also just asking, can we be paid decently instead of £3 an hour?
Yeah, so if I'm picking you up correctly, you're basically saying the institutions, they owe you a refund, really. They should be saying, we promised you one thing and you didn't get it. Liv, could I ask you, what are you studying for and when will you graduate?
So I'm studying English at King's College London, and I graduate this summer, which I put a little asterisk next to it because if the lecturers don't get what they want, I could have a delayed graduation because they could, refuse against marking.
So you really feel shortchanged?
100%. I have not had a single, there's very few experiences that I've had at uni that I could say to you, oh, it was a good experience. I have probably 5 friends. The social scene's not there. Societies just aren't there. Careers just isn't there. What really is there? Because teaching isn't there at the moment, is it?
Well, I really feel sorry for you. You're not alone with that. And I agree with you from the point of view that I think the institutions, they need to take a long, hard look. And if they haven't been able to keep their employees happy, the people they should be really keeping happy are their students, and guaranteeing, it's not that you're looking for money back or anything, you're just looking to graduate, you're looking for your qualification, you're looking to get a start in life from a business perspective or whatever. And all we can do, Liv, is wish you
the best.
And everybody else who's going through that the very best of it. And fingers crossed for you. Hope that all sorts itself out. Thank you very much indeed for talking to us this morning.
Thank you, Liv.
Okay.
After the break, we'll look at the cost.
What uni did you go to?
I went to Nottingham University and I did a master's in planning.
Oh,
yeah,
planning.
Planning, environmental planning. Yeah, I know. Do you know what? I really feel for that student there because
yes, of course.
My university days were absolutely the best years of my life, and I've got nephews and nieces who are at university now, and they, went to university during COVID. Spoiled their whole. Whole experience, a year learning online, and I really feel for them. I just feel like these lecturers, I do understand you need better paying conditions, but pick your moments, pick your time. Let's get these students through. Let's get their mental health back. Let's give them the experience. Now it's one thing after another. It's not fair on them either.
Everybody seems to lose in all of that. 21 minutes past 8. Let's take a break. After that, we'll be looking at the cost of loving crisis. You know about the cost of living, cost of loving on this Valentine's Day. 40% of you say you can't afford to get married.
Might not be a bad thing.
That's just what I was thinking after this.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today.
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
I just want to flag up something we're doing at 9:15 this morning. We're going to bring you an exclusive here for the channel, an interview with the mother of the late Archie Battersbee. That's Holly Dance, who speaks out for the first time since the inquest into the death of her son.
I feel lost. Like my heart has been ripped out. It's literally the heart of my family. My home don't feel the same. It just feels cold and empty.
Heartbroken, she's absolutely heartbroken, but she wants Archie's memory to live on with an Archie's Law. You can find out the details 9:15 this morning. And
you can join in any of our discussions by emailing gbviews@gbnews or tweet @gbnews.
So you have been doing that, and on the university strikes that we've just been talking about, Cheryl says, will students really miss the 1 hour contact they have a week? In the day, I attended lectures, seminars and tutorials every day of the week, not just 1 hour a week. I'm not sure that they're getting value for money or a quality education.
Yeah. I think, after the pandemic, it's more than just that, isn't it? Colin says, personally, I believe the whole university structure and deliverable courses and types should reflect the UK economy needs. We know where professional skilled people are in shortage, so why are there so many totally irrelevant courses offered?
Well, Colin makes a very good point, and that is educating, whether it's university students or whether it's school kids, for the job market, educating them for what industry needs, as opposed just doing a course that people say, oh, but it's part of your greater education and whatever it is. But, you know, if you're educated for a job, that's a
But you
that's
see,
a good
Liv
thing.
there was doing English, and I think English is a fundamental requirement of now and future, because it's about writing content, it's about bringing stories together. So, you know, somebody might look at a subject, but you really need to understand how it can help you in your jobs in this tech world. It's still very much important, English.
I think it's a pity you gave up town planning, because then you could have been of use to society instead of doing what you're doing now.
I actually worked in the private sector. I never worked for a local council.
Did you not?
So what my job was, I used to help people win appeals against the council's decision. So I worked a lot with the Department of the Inspectorate.
You should watch Clarkson's Farm.
Oh, really? Is he always up against planning?
He's always up against planning.
In rural areas, it's really difficult.
And they ban everything he tries to do.
Yeah.
Where he wants to put a dirt
That's probably
track
just because
down
it's
or-
Jeremy Clarkson, to be honest.
Well, everything. His life's made hell by them, but you could argue they're doing their jobs. And
Well, we've got to protect our, you know, rural environment at the same time. So it's a difficult
But they
one,
need
the countryside.
jobs. The farms need to be profitable. We need to be supporting farmers. You saw the report we did on farmers' mental health today.
Yeah, but we also...
No one cares. No one cares about poor farmers.
Yeah, but we also need to protect the countryside and for people to enjoy that
You ever
as well.
fly over this country? It's nothing but green. Green, 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 green,
Well,
green.
it's nice. It's nice.
There's too much green.
It's good. Well, what do you want to do? Concrete it all over?
Put a bit of HS2 down, then we can connect it all up. Anyway, on this romantic day, today, of course, is Valentine's Day, a celebration of love, romance, and maybe the perfect day to get engaged.
But there will be some engagements today. A new survey has found nearly half of Brits that want to get married say they can't afford to propose due to the cost of living a loving crisis.
I can understand that.
Yeah, our reporter Ellie Costello met a couple who got engaged with the help of a gummy ring.
A what?
A gummy ring, you know those chewy rings.
Okay, let's have a look.
Yasmin and Michael have been together for 2 years. They want to get married, but the cost of living crisis has made buying an expensive ring impossible. Michael took matters into his own hands and proposed with the help of a Haribo ring.
I knew it didn't matter if it was, you know, gold or if it was, you know,
Haribo.
a Haribo. I knew I wanted to get engaged with her.
I genuinely thought he was making fun of me. To start with, I thought he was joking. You had to convince me you weren't joking.
Yeah.
And then once I was convinced that you weren't joking, obviously I was like completely over the moon.
I just simply can't afford it. We've always said since we got engaged that we would like to get one, and every time you know we would get close to being able to afford it.
There's always just something more important, like an electricity bill or council tax or something suddenly more important.
You know, we're here in a blanket together because just heating's just no point. There's no point trying to heat the house.
Yeah.
Yasmin and Michael aren't alone. Since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, diamond prices have increased by 20% as people rush to invest their money in safer commodities like gold and diamonds. This increase in demand has made it harder for people to afford a traditional diamond ring. Hatton Garden-based jeweller Lottie Lee conducted a survey and found that 41% of couples who want to get married now say they cannot afford to. 47% of respondents were hesitant to buy an engagement ring because they were worried about the cost.
Ultimately, people still want to get engaged and they still want a fabulous engagement ring. What I'm seeing is that people will have to spend a lot longer saving in order to make a big purchase, and also people are much, much more careful about how they're spending their money. I would always recommend, in terms of other stones, you look at either a ruby or a sapphire. They're much more cost effective and they're still beautiful. Lab-grown diamonds are very cost effective. They're actually 50% less than natural diamonds. You can get much more bling for your money, and they are beautiful. You cannot tell the difference between them and a natural diamond.
Yasmin and Michael are considering alternative engagement rings and hope that once life gets more affordable, they can start saving for their future together.
The hope for the future is that the money will come in, or the cost of living will go down, and we'll be able to afford it, and we can get hitched.
A Haribo ring may not be to everyone's taste, but for Yasmin and Michael, the cost of living crisis means it's sweet enough for them to start their lives together. Ellie Costello, GB News.
Well, good luck to them.
I like that couple. I like that couple. I like their mentality. I think they're a really good example. Like, if you can't afford it now, don't waste your money. Don't go overdrawn. Don't bung it on a credit card. Do it when you can. Celebrate your love with a Haribo ring, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you're less of a person or less of a couple, does it?
No, and if you find the person that floats your boat that you feel you want to spend the rest of your life with, then you're very lucky. That's a very good feeling to have.
Yeah, I really
That's the
like
real
that.
treasure.
Yeah. And it's not all about the rings. We've done it. It's not about the rings and the frocks and the, it's nice to have. It's nice to have that big party, but it's not what you really remember.
The hotel venue and the...
I mean, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money.
Photograph albums,
I could have bought another
cars.
house. Well, I didn't spend that much, to be fair, but it could have put a deposit down for a house.
Yeah.
But
well, it's a decision people have to make, and if it's your thing, it's your thing. But if you're not in that position, all you need is love. All you need is someone to love, and I hope there is love in your life today,
exactly,
whoever you are,
definitely.
wherever you are. We're going to take a break there. After that, we're going through the newspapers. Norman Baker, Emily Carver. All we need is your company right after this.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamonn Holmes, back on the TV
Surprised
with me this morning.
even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes. Already to bless.
Oh, Eamonn.
Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamonn Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Just getting some breaking news coming in. The car giant Ford is cutting around nearly 4,000 jobs across Europe, 1,300 of them in the UK. It's going to be over the next 3 years. And obviously that'll affect workers in Dagenham and Halewood, their plants there as well. So Ford to cut 1,300 jobs in the UK over the next 3 years. Let's go through the newspapers. Joining us, Norman Baker and Emily Carver. Norman, you want to start with talking about the Israeli government. Benjamin Netanyahu, what are his plans?
This is a serious matter for what's lauded as the great democracy in the Middle East, Israel. You've got a situation where the Netanyahu government is beholden to these far-right religious parties in that country. And as a consequence of that, part of the deal of that has been that they're looking to control the judiciary more. They want control over the government's judicial appointments, and they want to be able to stop the government, stop the courts from striking out laws which are unconstitutional. And you've had 70,000 people on the streets, at least in Israel, and you've had the President of Israel warning that this is Isaac Herzog, saying there's a powder keg about to explode, talking about potential civil war. It's a very serious matter, what's happening in Israel.
And it affects the whole world, really.
It does affect the whole world, and it affects the Middle East, obviously, most directly, but it puts pressure on the Americans, and it just generally destabilises an area that's already very destabilised anyway.
We move on to the Times, Emily, with you. The man who murdered Sarah Everard, this animal, Wayne Couzens, who happily is behind bars, he's facing some other sex charges. Tell us more about this.
Yes, if I were a family member or friend of Sarah Everard, who, of course, was kidnapped, raped and murdered by serving police officer Wayne Couzens, I'd be absolutely furious reading this. Apparently, there were at least 4 incidents where he had indecently exposed himself, and it had been reported to the police, but nothing had been done. Days later, he then committed this awful, tragic crime. So one of the cases was that he flashed going through a drive-through at McDonald's, and that was reported. His car registration details were reported. This has all been found on the police's database, but of course nothing was done quickly enough for him to have been held to account. If it had been, perhaps he wouldn't have gone on to kill Sarah Everard. So this is really quite extraordinary. And again, it's another story that won't do very well when that will only damage trust in the police further.
I don't know, Emily, how we treat flashers and if they're tolerated or not. But here we see a situation where this guy became increasingly desperate to expose himself to people, whether it was in the woods or whether it was going through a drive-through at McDonald's or whatever. I mean, I don't want to say it's some sort of plea for help. I don't really care. But the fact is, I wonder, would a flashing incident be treated like, oh, well, you know...
I think sometimes it is. I think some people might even, giggle at the thought of it, or who on earth would do that? But perhaps it's like serial killers. They get a taste for blood. In this case, he got a taste for this kind of indecent exposure, and then you get some kind of thrill out of it and continue on and on and on.
He was building up to stopping Sarah Everard with his warrant card and saying, I'm arresting you for breaching COVID restrictions as well for not wearing a mask or something like
Yes, so clearly premeditated to a large extent. I mean, we don't know if he planned on killing her or if that was just how it escalated. But I remember when I was at school, there was a park nearby, and there was a case of a man who'd been seen exposing himself. I can't remember what was done, but I remember it not being taken as seriously, perhaps, as it should have been. You know, girls were still allowed to go through the park and things like that. But if it happened to me, it's never happened to me, but I imagine it would be extremely threatening.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean...
And just disgusting.
It's very simple. If that is reported to the police, you take it up because it's sexual harassment.
Particularly when it's a police officer.
Yeah.
But Sarah, the amount of women I talk to, and particularly talk about their school days, particularly in the tubes in London, how this went on, how people rubbed up against them, how people exposed themselves in the park. Now, it's never happened to me in my whole life, right? But the amount of women that I would
it happens to women. It
happened to you?
Well, when I was young, it did happen to me.
It shouldn't happen.
But that's the point. But if it does, we should have women the confidence to go into a police station and say this happened and log it. And, you know, and then, we can't control what the police do, but then it's their job to carry that forward. I know that there's so much of it, but it is our duty to at least log it and take that first step.
It's even worse than that, Eamonn, actually, because you get a situation where women are raped. They don't report it because they don't have confidence in the police system, and even if they do have confidence in it, then the amount of convictions is tiny,
so low,
3% or something. And also, I dealt with this when I was a minister. You had women going into court and who were then subject to cross-examination by the person who they were alleging had raped them because they were candidates in their own defence. And this is just going through the mill yet again in court.
Yeah, you have to be a brave woman to...
You do have to be a brave woman.
To stand up and...
It's quite horrendous what you have to go through. And also the insinuation, the cross-examination, you're wearing a short skirt, therefore you asked for it, this sort of thing. It's completely out of order.
The problem is, of course, it's innocent until proven guilty.
Emily, in the Telegraph, Brexit deal weeks away as negotiators solve the protocol row. I'll believe it when I see it.
Yes, it seems like we have these reports every now and again, but it seems like this may be the real deal, that in a fortnight we will have some kind of renegotiation done. The problem is that the European Court of Justice will still play a role, by the sounds of it. The UK side is trying to play down the role that it will continue to play. But, of course, this is something that the DUP and hard Brexiteers won't want to allow to continue to happen. So they won't want the European Court of Justice to have any role as an arbiter.
So basically it's going to ease the trading of goods or the transport of goods between the UK and Northern Ireland.
Exactly. Fewer customs checks, if any.
Okay. Right, good for that. Norman, here we are on Valentine's Day. Roses are red, violets are blue, but Lego's the place to go to, is it?
Yes, absolutely. Say it with Lego. Say it with plastic, is the story in the Daily Mail. And I suppose you could argue that giving someone Lego flowers means it's a demonstration that your love lasts the whole year rather than wilting after a few days. Maybe that's what it means.
But also, there's a lot of time and effort that's gone into making that Lego flower. My daughter does Lego, and it's a really... First, it's therapeutic, but it's really challenging, and there's a lot of time spent doing those things.
How would you respond to a bouquet of Lego
I'd respond to the fact that somebody thought. It was the thought that counts. That's what I would respond to.
And they put the effort into
it. They put the effort into it. It's beautiful. But also with Lego, can I say, I know it's plastic, but it is really... people recycle it.
I know,
they pass it down generation to generation.
It's true. I used to play with Lego when I was a child. I used to like Lego.
It's fantastic.
I think what's more worrying for me, anyway, is that 1 in 10 are more likely to buy a Valentine's gift for their pet than for their partner.
Oh, that's weird.
It's just weird, isn't it?
When I loved my dog, if my wife loved me the way my dog did, I would be very, very happy. I come in, she rolls around in the front hall.
Wrong.
Is this your wife or your dog?
And tell us what. Do not go down that route. Stop it right now.
I'm just telling you.
You're not going to give us a demonstration or anything like that right now.
Licked and cuddled.
We're talking.
Yes, and then the dog jumps up on me as well after that. It's so... I don't know why you're so...
Because you told me that story yesterday. And anyway, I'm interested to hear what Norman's point of view on the BBC chairman's position? I think untenable. What do you think?
No, absolutely. Look, I mean, there's two things about this, I think. Three things, actually. The first is he shouldn't have been appointed in the first place because he was a donor to a political party, the Conservatives in this particular case. I don't think anyone who is a donor to a political party should be appointed to an independent position in charge of the BBC. Secondly, it was all a bit murky, wasn't it? You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. He did Boris a favour, Boris did him a favour. That's so obviously the case. And thirdly, he's now lost confidence of the Labour Party and the SNP and probably the Lib Dems as well. You cannot carry on as chairman of the BBC in an independent position if the political parties in opposition have lost confidence in you. You've got to go.
I think the whole appointments process needs to be reviewed. I don't see why a Prime Minister should choose who's the chairman
I totally agree with that,
of a supposedly impartial broadcaster.
But the common factor in all of this, once again, is Boris Johnson.
It is.
I mean, either, there's chicanery afoot or he just doesn't see it. He never sees where there is a, conflict of interest.
Well, yes, and he seems to be very cosy with a lot of people, and a lot of people are very cosy with him. But it was also reported that he's making millions of pounds now from various speaking engagements.
Yes, and loans.
So he won't need to have loans from people anymore.
Why is someone lending him £800,000 in the first place? What for?
Because he was broke.
Because he's probably decorating his study in his new home.
Well, he has lots of offspring.
There we are. He'll be well anyway. Very good. Norman, Emily, thank you both very much indeed. Enjoyed it with you this morning. Thank you very much. And let's bring you up to date with what's happening news-wise.
Car giant Ford has said it's cutting around 3,800 jobs across Europe over the next 3 years. This includes 1,300 jobs in the UK. It's part of a major overhaul for the company.
Charities are urging MPs to take a clear stand in condemning violence against asylum seekers. An open letter with 100 signatories warns disorder outside a migrant hotel at the weekend could be repeated across the country. And that's following fireworks being thrown at police outside the Sweets Hotel in Knowsley, which saw 15 people arrested. UEFA says it bears primary responsibility for failures at the Champions League final in May last year. An independent report says the match, which saw Liverpool fans penned in and tear-gassed by French police, almost became a mass fatality catastrophe.
Archie Battersbee's mum, Holly Dance, has spoken out for the first time since an inquest concluded that he died accidentally in a prank or experiment that went wrong and had not intended to harm himself.
Well, Holly came into our building yesterday to speak to me exclusively about Archie and how she has coped after an absolutely nightmarish 9-month experience. Tell us about the conclusion the coroner reached.
So the coroner reached that it was an accident, possibly a prank that's gone wrong, something that isn't uncommon for boys, especially teenage or approaching teenage years, boys to do. They know right from wrong, they know that they shouldn't be doing things, but why do they do it? There is no reason why they do it. They just do it. That was actually what the coroner said.
That was just your boy being a 12-year-old, you think?
Just being a 12-year-old little boy.
What did you learn? Did you learn anything about your son that you didn't know through the coroner's summing up?
The bullying, Archie being bullied, was a massive shock to me. Because Archie always told me everything, and I still feel if it was getting to him to the level that he was worried or concerned, I do think that even if he didn't tell me, he would have told his brother. But had that support been in place at senior school, again, that trusted person, Archie might have been able to tell that person that he was being bullied and talk to, but he didn't have that trusted person.
But you don't believe he took his own life?
That's definitely not. Never.
Why is it definitely not?
I know my child, 100%, never. It's just he loved life and he had his plans for a future. The messages between him and his friends, sort of like the last few weeks between each other, talking about when they're famous, they're going to do this and they're going to buy this person a car and this person a house, and I'm going to wear this tracksuit and these shorts, and everything was positive.
What went wrong? Was he showing off? Was he parading himself in front of others?
I've got my views on what I think happened that day. I've gone over and over and over in my head, and I think he's climbed the banister in the hallway, and I think he's put this dressing gown over his head. The night before he was playing with the dressing gown in his sister's room. He put it on his forehead and tied it to Lily's feet.
Yeah.
This is his Lauren's half-sister. And then to the door handle, opening and closing the door handle. And when Lily asked him what he was doing, he just said, I don't know, I'm just bored. And I think because I removed him from school on the 30th of March, because the support wasn't in place, and I was concerned because things were starting to be highlighted. And for the first time in 7 months, and Archie he wasn't getting his support. He's gone from 32.5 hours one-to-one support to 15 minutes at dinner time. The transition is the hardest part for Archie. He doesn't cope with change. So I removed him from the school and called for an education meeting to see why the support wasn't in place. And I just think that he was bored. You know, like the lockdown. You know, there was a couple of messages where Archie and his friends, you know, said about being depressed, you know, which, yes, the whole word depressed is concerning, but I think kids use that word very easy these days, you know, I'm bare depressed, this is how they'll talk. Looking at the messages between him and his friend saying, yeah, same, and this was in the lockdown. Now for Archie to go from being so full of energy and channeling that energy out into all Archie's hobbies to nothing because we're on lockdown, of course you're going to get a child that's not his normal self, you know, but to the point where he would consider taking his life, definitely not, you know. The only thing I could do is obviously take him out for walks.
I know, talking to you, you know, how committed you were to Archie, how much you cared, how much you wanted to make a difference. But I'm sure you examine yourself and what you did and what you didn't do.
Of course I do. I've absolutely ripped myself apart. Nobody could judge me more than I judge myself. I've been through everything I could possibly. Could I have done this different? Could I have done that different? Even Archie's one-to-one teacher at his primary school, she feels the same. She's ripped herself apart, you know. Had I only gone up to the school with him, you know, I think all of us, his sister, you know, all of us have ripped ourselves apart. What could we have done different? That I am pushing for the Archie's Army Law. My MP has now proceeded forward with the letter to Steve Barclay, because we was promised a meeting back in July. So we're going to now move, now the inquest is over, we're going to move forward with that.
How much do you miss him?
I feel lost. Like my heart has been ripped out. It's literally the heart of my family. My home don't feel the same. It just feels cold and empty. Just nothing's ever going to be the same again. And if I can avoid this, whether it be via pushing for the SEN and the support within school, because I strongly believe I fought a 4-year, which a lot of people don't know. These people that go on about, oh, she should have supported him more. They haven't got a clue, they don't know me. I spent 4 years already fighting the system to get Archie's education on track and get him into a mainstream school, because he wasn't getting the support. His education healthcare plan was formed over a 2-week period of when me and Archie's dad split up, and all that little boy needed was nurture and support within the school, and he was failed. I spent 4 years fighting that and won that in court and got him into mainstream school, and that little boy proved everybody wrong. And his last headmaster at the inquest described Archie as a success story, and that's how I want Archie remembered, not from the label that he was given when he was 5 years old. I worked so hard with that little boy, and I think that
There's so many children and parents that are fighting to get their kids the support in school. I know so many that are fighting to get their kids support in school. It's just not there, and this is where these kids' lives can be turned around, you know, rather than leave them and then they just become a problem to society when they're older. They can be helped.
Well, good luck to you and what you're trying to achieve, and in memory of your little boy, and he'll live on through all that you achieve. Holly, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
It was so sad doing that interview, and you know, I was very aware after it that you don't want to lead Holly to a situation where she's going to cry. But she loved that boy so much, she continues to love him. Beautiful looking child. And, you know, it was just very, very sad. But she wants Archie's memory to live on through an Archie's Law. And parents, be aware of what your kids are doing online. Even if you think you are, check again. With that, we'll take a break. Back after this.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
British fighter jets on standby to shoot down Chinese spy balloons as the Chancellor faces pressure to increase defence spending.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock on Tuesday the 14th of February. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Sarah Khan.
Leading the news on this Valentine's Day morning, no love lost between UK and China. Rishi Sunak has pledged to do whatever it takes to keep the country safe. Typhoon fighter jets ready to shoot down the Chinese spy balloons follows the downing of a fourth suspected device over the USA.
And it comes as the Chancellor faces pressure to raise military spending in his budget next month, with the Defence Secretary reportedly pushing for an £11 billion increase in funding.
70,000 university staff are beginning a three-day strike today as industrial action continues. The disruption to lectures and seminars will affect 150 universities.
And are you the one that got away? We'll be speaking to the most successful couple from Love Island about what it takes to find your soulmate.
Because it is Valentine's Day, so get in touch with your stories and what you're going to do and your secret to keeping love alive in your relationship. Or maybe you find new love. There's nothing like finding new love, is there?
That's nice.
You know,
yeah.
That feeling in your tummy.
Yeah, we won't have that now. We lost that a long time ago. We've been married for over 20 years, the two of us. But we want that back, but we can't get it back.
Should you ever? What is your most romantic moment? Let us know. Share them with us and we'll happily read them out.
So our top story is that the Prime Minister has vowed to do whatever it takes to keep the country safe amid threats from Chinese spy balloons.
But what are these threats? Rishi Sunak said Typhoon fighter jets are on standby in the event of an incursion after the USA shot down a fourth suspected spy device.
And it comes as the Chancellor faces pressure to increase military spending to tackle aggression by China and Russia, with the Defence Secretary asking for an £11 billion in funding.
Well, what's the chances of getting that? Assistant Editor of The Spectator, Cindy Yu, joins us now. Cindy, I suppose the thing is that we're talking about defence budgets, we're talking about the Chinese so-called spy balloons, whatever they are. I suppose defending this country takes on a whole new aspect. It evolves, it changes, our needs change. So if Ben Wallace is saying, hey, give me £11 billion, Chancellor, well, whether he gets it or not, what should it be spent on, or how is that going to change?
Yeah, I mean, this is the question that the Treasury is asking the Ministry of Defence right now, because they say, you know, 2 years ago we gave you a multi-billion-pound boost. We know that a lot of your money is wasted on programmes that never really deliver. So one thing that they cite is the Ajax programme, which is meant to kind of come up with this kind of military vehicle, but that actually hasn't delivered anything in the over a decade that it's been in place for, even though it costs billions of pounds. So the Treasury is saying, you know, what are you going to be spending this on? You sure you're not going to waste this money? Because we gave you money just 2 years ago. And actually the UK already spends 2.1% of its GDP on defence. So that's, you know, that's more than most European countries. So I think Ben Wallace will have a struggle on his hands with this Chancellor very much following in the steps of Rishi Sunak in terms of being very tight with the purse strings.
But where I would be sympathetic to Wallace is that the threat changes. The way the threat comes to us now changes. And these spy balloons, if that's what they are, demonstrates that. I just can't believe that the Chinese are just suddenly sending these out and people are discovering them. I mean, they must have been going on for years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Americans are now saying that a few of them flew over America during the Trump era and even before then. So I think there's something that we don't know here. I would love to be on a fly on the wall in the Situation Room right now to understand why now it's suddenly become such a big story.
That's what I was about to say. If I was, like, you know, tuning into the news this morning and I've heard that actually this has been going on for years, we all do it, everybody does it, you know, the Americans do it on the Chinese do it on the Americans. Why now? Why is it a big deal now? Do you have any inclination why it could be?
Well, I think it could just be that the one that they shot down 10 days ago was just so visible.
Right.
That it really freaked out, you know, the people underneath. You could see, I mean, that's totally fair enough. If we saw massive...
Well, we just think it was an alien, or we would think it's an, you know,
well, I think
UFO.
the reporting already said it was Chinese origin. So if we saw that in the UK, I think people would be very concerned, and for legitimate reasons. So I think having it be visible was very, very concerning for a lot of people. So I think it definitely flew lower than it was meant to have flown.
Right.
But you're right, Sarah. I mean, it does happen. Has allegedly happened for years. So I don't know. I mean, it's just one of those things where as civilians, we don't really know the full extent to how much. I feel like there's something that we don't know that's going on that I'm sure the leaders of these countries do know and are being briefed on.
Yeah. Cindy, I want to talk about other matters at home. Today's another day of strikes. This time it's university workers and university lecturers. And in the sympathy scale, it's not really scoring very well. But as we were talking to someone who's trying to complete their English literature course at uni this year, she felt that she hadn't had an education yet.
Right.
Or it was disrupted by COVID, it's disrupted by strikes, it's disrupted by remote teaching, all sorts of things as well. You're a university graduate. Did you have a good time at university? Can you have any empathy or sympathy for students who are trying to get a degree at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. I had the best time at university, but it was years before COVID. And then COVID struck, and people, I felt so sorry for those people who were starting their freshers' years when the first year of COVID was starting out during lockdown. And then, I know younger people, colleagues at work now, who never really had the chance to have a university experience or never really made proper friends because they didn't really see each other that often. It was all virtual, it was all online, in your parents' home and that kind of stuff. So now that COVID is over, for these strikes to be disrupting and continuing the disruption to university education, I think it's such a shame.
Well, it's such a shame, but how do they resolve it? I mean, what are these workers to do, really, to get attention to their pay and conditions if they don't go on strike?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, but I think there's also, I'm slightly cynical in the sense that everyone is going on strike now.
Yeah.
And there will be at least some of these industries that are just making the most of this moment to go on strike right now because it's such a large degree.
I agree. I do believe in their cause, but I feel like we've had COVID and now we're in a real sort of situation with everything, and it's like now is the most impactful time to really hit us where it hurts. And I think that's a little bit naughty.
I also think in industries where you could be not necessarily automated, but at least, a lecture could be filmed, you could be replayed. You do risk showing that actually maybe some of these stuff aren't as necessary to university teaching as they claim to be. I mean, during COVID, they did have virtual lectures. So, I think universities should be trying to make the most of that now. But I would be, a little bit concerned that by going on strike now, I actually show up that my job isn't as necessary to the proper functioning of education.
Well, on that point, I've got to make you redundant now. We're out of time. Cindy, always a pleasure talking to you. Cindy Yu is the assistant editor of The Spectator. Thank you very much indeed for your take on things. A senior American general has failed to rule out aliens being behind these balloons or these UFOs shot down over America.
So we've sent our reporter Paul Hawkins to Bonsall, a village in Derbyshire, which has a reputation of being a UFO hotspot, with 19 sightings reported by locals since the early 2000s.
Paul, what have you found out?
I'll tell you what I've found out, that it's lovely up in here in the Derbyshire Dales in the village of Bonsall, and there have been UFO sightings here. In fact, I was just surveying a copy of the prestigious UFO magazine. This is from 2002 when Bonsall, Britain's UFO capital. That was when there was a really famous sighting, which we're going to find out more about. But we're outside the Barley Mow pub at the moment, which is kind of like the epicentre for UFO activity here in the village. They've kind of celebrated the fact that there's so many UFO sightings here over the past 20 years. And in fact, the previous landlord used to give guided tours to people who descend on the village and want to be taken to the places around the moors spotted UFOs. So we thought we'd come here to have a chat with the landlord, Colette, who can tell us more about kind of why this is Britain's hotspot. Speaking to us, really appreciate it. First of all, just give us an idea of how many sightings there have been in the past 20 years.
I think over sightings, and going back as far as the early 40s, crazily enough. When I first came here, which was sort of 20 years ago, I started to hear about the UFO sightings. I've owned the pub for 14 years, but this, there's been a real sort of interest in it, and we get people literally from all over the world coming quite regularly with all sorts of theories.
And if we just have a look here are some of the newspaper cuttings over the years. And this one here in particular, by the way, not another UFO. This is probably the most famous.
And the footage was taken by a lady named Sharon Rowland. She knew it was something quite special. She was recording it with a camcorder by chance when she was trying out a new camcorder she'd received for Christmas, I think the story goes. And the footage went sort of local, then national. And the story is that there was a lot of interested bodies from the US, NASA, Fox Pictures, who knows. And she sold it for a sum of money. She was savvy enough to get it verified by a lab to show that it was authentic, and that's probably the most famous one that there's been here. But there's been many sightings over the years, and there still is, you know.
Yeah, and you've not seen any yourself, but do you believe?
Well, some of the people have told me to. Well, I'd like to see. I like, to experience it with my own senses as such. But some of the stories I've heard from people are from people who, you would have. It'd be more unreasonable to not believe what they say, almost, really. So who knows? I mean, it's great viewing conditions on the moor. It's 360 degrees.
But it's often worth waiting to see if the picture unfreezes, but I reckon there's been alien technology that has tried to block our signals there because they don't want their secrets going out to the rest of the world.
This is a really good opportunity for you to cite your UFO.
They rely on people like you not believing. That's how they can work behind the scenes.
Well, listen, talking about not believing, when I want to talk to you about this because I'm really kind of confused. So, look, I want to support people's pay and conditions. I really genuinely do, because I've got family who are teachers, doctors, working in the NHS. However, I do feel when things are really down, and we are, the cost of living, energy prices, I feel like we really need to pull together, work
for the greater good.
For the greater good, and then when we've come out, I then think that's your time to say, right, okay, let's go for these things. I just feel otherwise it's just too much for people.
When you say we've really got to pull together, you don't mean we, you mean you. People who work in these striking industries, doesn't affect you.
Well, I'm working, I'm self-employed.
Yes, but you're not on strike. Or
yeah, but I don't have holiday pay. I don't have sick pay. I don't have a pension. I don't have any of those things. So I'm happy to pay my tax to the public purse. But I just think teachers, please help teach the kids. Nurses, doctors, please let's get through this backlog of the pandemic. That's what I'm saying. And if you're going to tax me higher later on to serve these people, when it's I'm okay.
That's right. Well, what it really proves...
Does that make me a bad person thinking that?
No, it means you typical of most people, which is most people don't care about strikes unless it affects them. So they don't care about other people's pay and conditions.
Well, I care.
They think
because I live in a civil society and my kids are being educated by teachers and my mother's just been treated by cancer in an NHS hospital.
Well,
I care.
I always think there's a reason people strike. There's a reason.
Well, is it people? We've just heard, they're not being asked about...
Consulted
by the union leaders. Are they being asked?
Well, it's all part... Look at that camera angle. Isn't that quite strange? Look at that. It's that alien technology.
It is.
Where's my head? There, show me that again. Can we do that again? No, yes, go back. Look at that. It was quite a strange shot. But anyway, it's quite inventive. OK, so we throw it out there. That is part of the debate. But you'll not be here tomorrow to deal with it.
I'll be working.
Isabel,
doing a proper job.
Isabel.
And she can do her proper job.
It's coming up to 9:15. Now we go to the story that is obsessing so many of us, Nicola Bulley and her disappearance. Her next-door neighbour has spoken out about that for the first time, and she praised the strength of her close friend's partner, Paul.
Having lived next door to Nicola for 5 years, the families are close with Charlotte, and Nicola's children regularly play outside together.
No, we spoke to Charlotte earlier, who said the family are staying hopeful that Nicola will return, but every day is just so difficult for everyone.
So after the break, we'll speak to...
I think the fact that people think they know her, they do know her, because everybody that's sharing what we're sharing about her is exactly how she is. She would do anything for anybody. She, you know, on our street, we're only a street of five houses, and if you need anything, if you need any advice, if you need anything for the children, she's there. So I think that's why it's touched so many people's hearts, because she is exactly how people are painting the picture to be. It's just an impossible situation to put yourself in, and to see what they're going through every single day, trying to remain positive, trying to wait for news, wait for evidence, wait for just anything that they can discuss with the children. It's really heartbreaking to see what the whole family are going through on a daily basis, and it's just a constant cycle that the whole community is feeling for them every single day.
I know, and we all want it resolved, hopefully for the best. We hope she's just gone missing more than anything else. What effect does this have on you and your habits and people that you know living in the street or the community? You must all really think twice about walking by that river, or what is that apprehension like?
We've said it from day one, you know, we've all done that walk. We all walk that river. We're all mums. We all do the drop-off. We all don't think that we will go and do a walk like that and not come back. So it's really, really hit all mums, all women, I would say, in the area that do that, because we've all done it and we've all managed to not fall in. We know the terrain. It's not a walk that you don't know. And so it's really unnerved people, especially with the lack of evidence. The thing that's eating away, I think, all of us on the street is it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right that she would be in the water. And we've said that from day one. But obviously there's no evidence for any of the avenues of questioning. So it's really, where are her keys? Where are all these different things of hers? How can you just vanish into thin air? It seems impossible, and yet here we are.
Charlotte, there's obviously a lot of police visibility in your community now. It's, you know, the time is ticking day by day. What are the feelings and the relationship like between, you know, your community and the police? Are people getting frustrated, you know, because this will be impacting your life and as you know it?
I think from my interactions with Paul and Emma and seeing the police, you know, they only have good things to say. They say they're working really hard to just try and find anything that can lead us. You know, we're all working towards the same goal. It's not a competition who can get the evidence first. We all just want the same thing, which is to bring Nikki back.
Yeah. And, you know, Charlotte, if you walk out your front door today, you could bump into Paul, you could see him. Must be very difficult for you, you know, with the amount of days that have passed to strike up a conversation, or what do you say to him? What do you say?
Well, we're in regular contact with Paul next door. You know, we're helping with the girls. We're just trying to support as much as we can, because we are a small row of houses and we see each other every day. Someone has to know something.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. As you say, keep going. Our thoughts are with you. Our thoughts are with Paul and the girls. Charlotte, thanks for talking to us. Really appreciate it. And we can only hope that Nicola is found safe and well and soon. We'll take a break there after that.
We've got Love Island stars Olivia and Alex Bowen, who are going to be talking about finding the one this Valentine's Day.
And they did.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like.
Absolutely.
On Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today.
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
To end the programme today is the official day of love, and we're asking, how do you find the spark with someone? How do you know if they are the one?
Now, we've got Olivia and Alex Bone, who met on Love Island in 2016, and they've stayed together since. It's been 4.5 years since they've been married, actually, and they join us now. Congratulations, guys. Lovely to see you, smiling. What are you doing for Valentine's Day today?
Always smiling. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, Valentine's today. I mean, we actually haven't bought each other a Valentine's card, have we?
Oh, there you go.
We've been so busy that we've not. I don't recommend.
But you know, Alex and Olivia, when we look at the survey that says so many people worry about a date tonight because they worry about their confidence, they worry about being shown up, they have anxiety about it. Now, there's a difference between being thrilled and excited about something and being anxious to the point that you're embarrassed about yourself, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, like this is the day of love, isn't it? So a lot of people are going to be going on their first dates. A lot of people are going to be going on dates that they've been on for years. So yeah, just got to go out and enjoy yourself, really.
I think it is really hard for people to be themselves nowadays. I think there's so much pressure on everyone to, you know, live up to standards that we set online and things like that. But at the end of the day, you need to meet someone that is going to suit you. So you've got to be your authentic self. We've actually just done a campaign with TGI Fridays, and they said 59% of people aren't authentic on their first dates, which is crazy to me. So we're trying to convince everyone just to be yourself. We met and fell in love because we were both weird. So, you know, you just got to be yourself. I can't shout about that enough.
But you talk about, because you're on Love Island, you talk about people feeling the pressure to look good, whatever. Do you think your programme adds to that pressure? Because you two are both beautiful people. You know, it's difficult, isn't it? When young people are watching that, thinking, I've got to look like that.
Look at you. Yeah, I think it's a hard one. I think, you know, Love Island is that escapism. It is a fun programme to watch. I think we all need to take it with light heart and just enjoy it for what it is. It's reality TV. But at the end of the day, we all have ourselves at home to remember that we have to be naturally ourselves in normal life. This is TV. This is reality TV. It's a programme we're watching for an hour. And I think if I can take the time to remind people that it is just an hour of a day. You don't see them sitting there slobbing out, eating crisps, and we all do that. So I think it is just key to remember that we are all normal, and that is a programme that has been put together for your entertainment.
Final point in 15 seconds, Alex. How quickly did you know, or when did you know that Olivia was the one?
Careful.
Well, actually, on the day of the final, I accidentally said that I loved you, and Olivia didn't hear me. And then when I said it, I was like, "Oh my god, I actually meant that!" And that was the first time. And then I didn't. Olivia actually said it to me like about a month later, and I made her think that she was the one that said it to me first.
Oh,
well, we love the both of you, and thanks for your time today. Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you. God bless. Thank you very much indeed.
You're a bit like that, fall in love really quickly, don't you?
I would, yeah. I would.
You're a big romantic.
Thank you. Fell in love with you the past 2 days.
Been lovely. Thank you. Got through it.
You got through it, yeah. It was great.
I'm sorry for any hiccups or anything like that. I do apologise if that spoiled your viewing out there, guys.
No,
but
not.
I was just doing it on the job, as they say.
We say goodbye to Sarah, who's on the job, and Isabel, who comes in tomorrow.
Sounds all wrong.
6 a.m. and is here for the rest of the week. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Tom Harwood next.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people